Chapter 1. Prologue. The world that lost its god is nothing but delicious prey. Outer gods. The absolute beings who have created countless universes since the beginning of time. Itarim. The Itarim, scattered across various dimensions, noticed that the master of a distant dimension had disappeared, and their eyes gleamed. They didn't care about the death of their brethren. All that mattered to them was the vast amount of mana remaining in that world. The masterless power belonged to whoever claimed it first, and so began the Outer Gods' War. The dimensional gap is connecting numerous universes. Tearing the hard wall with force, the apostles of Itarim poured out. But a single man stood before them, Sung Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch, the greatest fragment of brilliant light, his entire body enveloped in black aura, opened his mouth. Arise. At that word, tens of millions of troops, composed of the Angels of Light and the Shadow Legion, raised their weapons, and so began the war. The invaders from outer space endlessly attacked, no matter how many were killed. A tense battle, where they couldn't let their guard down for even a moment, continued for a long time. There's no end in sight. It's a miracle that we've held out this long. This war was always a losing battle for us. I agree. If it weren't for the Shadow Monarch, our defenses would have already fallen. The rulers, the six-winged angels, paid their respects to Sung Jinwoo. They were the fragments of brilliant light, originally born as apostles of God. The beings who realized the cruelty of their God and became God-slayers of their own volition. A long time ago, God, who created this world, split the primordial light and darkness into 8 pieces each, creating the fragments of brilliant light and the monarchs. And from the moment they were born, they continued an endless war, killing each other according to their destined fate. Countless beings died in the war that lasted for eons, and that fate befell even the commanders of the war, the fragments of brilliant light and the monarchs. But their empty seats were eventually filled by others. The destruction of a monarch's spiritual body released its inherent primordial darkness. Similarly, the demise of a fragment of brilliant light freed its primordial light. These forces sought new hosts, giving rise to another monarch and fragment of brilliant light respectively, to maintain the balance of the war. But they realized the purpose behind it only after a very long time had passed, that it was all for the amusement of the cruel absolute being who wanted the war to continue forever. But now that God was dead and the monarchs were all killed, they thought the long and arduous war was finally over and peace had come, only to be invaded by the outer gods who noticed God's absence. The apostles of Itarim are still being born, but our forces are stagnating. Since ancient times, the soldiers of heaven, led by the rulers, were born from the fruits of the world tree. But after God died, the world tree gradually stopped bearing fruit. Replenishing their forces was impossible. But there was one exception. The king who ruled over death, the Shadow Monarch. Only he and his legion were eternally immortal. The power of creation had disappeared, but death was eternal. As the rulers said, if it weren't for Sung Jinwoo's Shadow Legion, which continued to resurrect even after death, this war would have already ended with the absolute destruction of this world. My liege, we have a problem. Marshal Igris suddenly appeared before Sung Jinwoo. Our rear defenses have fallen. Where? They targeted the area with the weakest magic power. Don't tell me it's Earth. I apologize. We focused our forces on the front lines, so the defenses in the rear were weak. Sung Jinwoo sighed. Earth, which had barely regained peace, was once again in danger. Gates will open on Earth again. The rulers murmured, watching Sung Jinwoo. The residents of the Chaos world once invaded Earth. The rulers, who were the main culprits behind that incident, hurriedly made excuses. But it's different from back then. Indeed, our goal was to help Earth grow and protect it from the monarchs. But the Itarim's goal is pure invasion. They're trying to destroy our weakest point to confuse us. My liege, we need to send troops to Earth. The rulers strongly opposed Igris's suggestion. I forbid it. If we split our forces, the balance of power we've barely managed to maintain will collapse. That's exactly what the Itarim want. If we focus on defending the rear and the front lines fall, we'll ultimately lose the war. Sung Jinwoo finally made a decision as he listened to their fierce debate. Beru. Oh, my king! The king of ants, who had been gleefully tearing the enemy's limbs apart, responded to his call. Marshal Beru, reporting for duty. Go to Earth. Do you mean? Sung Jinwoo nodded. Yes, it's time to unseal Suho. Beru's eyes widened with anticipation. Come back as soon as possible. Your command is my will. Beru immediately turned into a ray of light and flew towards Earth. Sung Jinwoo silently watched him leave, and then his gaze turned back to the approaching enemies. His lips were firmly pressed together. His eyes blazed fiercely. Come, apostles of the outer gods. The war continued. Chapter 2, Chapter 01. Do you really like ants that much? At Hankook University Art Museum, painting major teaching assistant Lim Do-gyun made a disgusted face as he looked at Suho's work. Ant paintings were plastered all over one wall of the exhibition hall. Various kinds of sketches, including oil paintings and watercolors. The types were diverse, and the appearances of the ants were also varied. Teaching assistant Lim attached the nameplate he brought to the wall below. Hankook University Painting Department Assignment Exhibition. If we gathered all the ants you've drawn since you were a freshman, it would fill a truck. Why didn't you go to the Department of Entomology instead of the art? I thought about it, but there was no separate ant specialization. You only like ants, not other insects? Yes, I've liked ants since I was young. When I saw a line of them, I would walk carefully so as not to step on them. You liked them since you were young? Well, at least your taste is consistent. Teaching assistant Lim chuckled and continued to look around Suho's paintings. Then he suddenly stopped. This one looks a little different. There was a humanoid ant painted with black shadows blazing. The movement is dynamic and good. Did you draw a magical beast? A magical beast? No way. It's just an ant that appeared in my dreams when I was young. Haha, you're something else. You even dream about ants? How young were you? Before the cataclysm. The cataclysm. It was a term that referred to the apocalyptic crisis that suddenly came to Earth 2 years ago. Mysterious gates appeared all over the world, and terrifying magical beasts poured out from within, invading Earth. But fortunately, a very small number of people awakened to supernatural abilities, and humanity was able to barely overcome the crisis. That was just 2 years ago, when Suho was just 20 years old, a freshman in college. However, the time when he had those ant dreams was much earlier, during middle and high school. Anyway, you're a strange one. Teaching assistant Lim chuckled and looked at Suho's painting again. But you really draw well. It feels like it's going to jump out of the painting and bite me. Seriously, I mean your painting is that vivid. Suho laughed inwardly at those words. It has to be. He wasn't exaggerating. The ant in the painting was his nightmare itself. It was a monster that appeared in his dreams during puberty and tried to kill him. Looking back, it was a truly terrible dream. Suho recalled. Level up. In that dream, Suho had to fight a life-or-death battle against monsters for no reason, armored knights and ant legions endlessly blocking his path, and later even giant dragons. He leveled up like in a game when he killed those monsters, and if he died, it was a reset. He had to go back to the beginning and start everything over from level 1. The only way to escape that dream was to somehow survive and reach the last room. And after endlessly fighting like that, he barely managed to reach the end, but absurdly, the final boss's face resembled my father. Suho smiled bitterly, thinking that it was truly just a teenage dream. But at some point, he stopped having those dreams. That was probably around that time. Yes, it was the summer of his first year of high school, to be exact. After his parents went missing, Suho's peaceful daily life crumbled. Around that time, an ominous thing appeared in a corner of the museum building. You left it here? Yes, senior. The teaching assistant said he kept it here. Creak. The painting major students opened the storage room door to collect the exhibits, and their eyes widened as they saw it inside. Huh? Crackle, crackle. A pitch-black hole was on the wall. It's a gate? Report it quickly. The students backed away in a panic. They were about to report about the situation with trembling hands, but their senior hurriedly stopped them. Calm down. It's clearly a closed gate. You're right. The blue mist isn't flowing out yet. Yes, it's still too early for a dungeon break. That was a close one. The students breathed a sigh of relief as they grasped the situation. Dungeon break was a term that referred to the phenomenon of magical beasts pouring out of a gate, but it didn't happen immediately after a gate was created. First, blue mist flowed out and contaminated the surroundings, and only then would the entrance unseal and the magical beasts come out. So it's still safe. Heh. Senior, why are you laughing like that? It's still dangerous, so let's report it quickly. You fools, haven't you heard the rumor? You can become an awakened if you inhale the blue mist? Ah! The junior's ears perked up at the senior's words. No one knew what exactly the blue mist was, but there was a rumor that had been spreading like an urban legend on the internet for a while. It claimed that the mist was actually vaporized magic power, and if you inhaled it, even an ordinary person could awaken. Isn't that just a baseless rumor? It hasn't been proven false. Heh, so let's confirm it ourselves this time. Who knows? Maybe an S-rank hunter will appear among us. The junior's eyes changed at the senior's words. The astronomical amount of money earned by S-rank hunters came to mind. The corpses of magical beasts and dungeonors became sought after as new materials. Hunters were able to gather all these resources, so they were seen as a symbol of success and wealth. However, it had only been 2 years since the cataclysm. The method for awakening magical power remained a mystery. Besides, you guys know that teaching assistant Lim is an E-rank awakened, right? I've heard that. He always complains that he can't earn money because he's an E-rank hunter. That's why he works as a teaching assistant during the semester. Tsk, you don't know anything. That's a deception, you punk. Do you have any idea how much he earns just by entering the dungeon as a minor, not even a raider? How much does he earn? The senior whispered as if revealing a great secret, and the junior's eyes widened. What? He earns that much? Even though he's an E-rank? Yes, you punk. Even the lowest-ranked hunters earn that much if they're lucky. Are you really going to miss this opportunity, huh? Wow, hunters are the best after all. But why is the teaching assistant still clinging to the school if he earns that much? He earns money in the dungeon and spends it lavishly when doing art, and he gets a lot of exhibition opportunities by working in the teaching assistant's office. That's amazing. The income of an E-rank was much more persuasive than the possibility of S-rank awakening, which was rarer than winning the lottery. Eventually, the juniors subtly lowered the hands that were holding their phones at their seniors' continuous persuasion. Well, they say it's safe for a while, even if the blue mist flows out. Then should we wait a little bit? Just for a bit? You guys are finally getting it. Life is all about taking chances. If we just take a sip as soon as the mist comes out and then report it, there won't be any danger. A while later, dark blue mist finally began to seep out of the gate. Thud, the building suddenly shook. Suho in the exhibition hall looked up. What? Is it an earthquake? Something was strange. It felt like space itself was shaking. But Suho was the only one who felt the change. No one else in the exhibition hall noticed. It was then. A student walked into the exhibition hall. Teaching assistant Lim, who was near the entrance, approached him and spoke. Youngchul, I told you to go to the storage room. What took you so long? I warned them. Youngchul? But the senior? Park Youngchul? The smoke. Something's wrong. Teaching assistant Lim's expression hardened as he saw Youngchul's condition up close. His pupils were dilated and unfocused, and his mouth was muttering incomprehensible woe. Erides, Park Youngchul, what's in your mouth? At teaching assistant Lim's question, Youngchul finally realized his state. Whoosh! Blue smoke was seeping out of his mouth and nose. This isn't right. Ugh! Youngchul panicked and covered his mouth with his hand, but that only made more smoke seep through his fingers. And then, flare, with a surge of heat, blue fire engulfed Youngchul's body. Teaching assistant! Suho, who was running from behind, grabbed teaching assistant Lim's body. Cook! Hot! Teaching assistant Lim, who stepped back, widened his eyes. Youngchul's body was burning, enveloped in blue smoke. Kya! What is that? The students nearby screamed in terror as they witnessed the horrifying sight. Wail! A chilling siren suddenly blared from the school speakers. The students began to murmur at the sudden sound. A gate has appeared on school grounds. A gate? The current location of the gate is the Art Museum building. Shit! That's here! Wah!
Kya!
The chaos intensified. The students began to run in a panic. Having witnessed someone burning to death right before their eyes, they felt indescribable fear. However, that was not the only problem. Youngchul's body was burning right in the middle of the exhibition hall's entrance. They had to pass by him to get outside. Flare. One of the students who ran ahead faltered at the intense heat. Is there another exit? He hurriedly looked around, but there wasn't one. There was only one exit. And while the students were panicking, something unbelievable happened. Huh? What's happening? Youngchul's body, which had turned into charcoal, was getting up again, enveloped in blue mist. Wait, is that? Teaching assistant Lim's eyes widened. It's a magical beast. Get away from there. He shouted urgently. But it was too late. The blue mist magical beast, using Youngchul's body as a wick, swung its arm like a whip. Crash! Ak! The students' bodies were thrown to the ground, coughing up blood, and as the blue mist clung to their clothes, their bodies also began to burn. Uwak! Fire! Fire! Kya! The students scattered in terror. Screams filled the air. Oh my God, it really was a mist burn. Teaching assistant Lim hurriedly took out his phone. A mist burn wasn't something an E-rank like him could handle alone. Suho asked urgently as he sent a request for backup. Mist burn? What kind of magical beast is that? If you're hit by that guy, teaching assistant Lim gritted his teeth. You'll turn into the same thing. Krah! Just then, the bodies of the students attacked by the mist burn rose again, burning with blue flames. Chapter 3. Chapter 2. Ah! The situation was dire. Screams echoed everywhere. The emergency alarm blared incessantly. The mist burns, having multiplied in number, continued to claim new victims. At this rate, we'll all end up like that, teaching assistant Lim shouted. A mist burn wasn't a monster he could handle at his level. Moreover, it triggered his deepest trauma. Dash! Huh? Teaching assistant? Where are you going? Suho was startled. The only hunter here, Mr. Lim, was running away. Teaching assistant Lim, narrowly dodging the mist burn's attacks, escaped the exhibition hall alone. Should he follow him? After a brief moment of hesitation, Suho moved, but in the opposite direction. He ran to the corner of the room and grabbed a fire extinguisher. I don't know if this will work. He couldn't bring himself to abandon the others and run away. Suho ran towards the mist burns with the fire extinguisher. Pshh! White powder sprayed out, covering the monsters. Of course, it wouldn't cause significant damage since it was a non-magical attack, but this much was enough to temporarily suppress their firepower. This is good enough for now. Suho, relieved that the fire extinguisher was effective, continued spraying the other mist burns. He looked around in the meantime. Are you okay? Suho found a collapsed friend and helped him up. His colleague's face was covered in tears and snot. Hey, snap out of it! Suho shook his body, but his eyes were still unfocused. Slap! Slap! He slapped his face to bring him back to his senses. Suho? His friend's eyes finally focused. Did he sprain his ankle? Suho's gaze subtly shifted downwards. Let's get out of here first. Suho lifted his friend and carried him on his back. Thanks to the fire extinguisher, the mist burn's movements were temporarily impaired. This was their only chance to escape. Sob. What about the teaching assistant? His friend asked tearfully. Everyone in the painting major knew that teaching assistant Lim was a hunter, but he was nowhere to be seen in this critical situation. He was requesting backup from the Hunter Association earlier. The guy's already scared. There was no need to mention that he ran away after that. A sigh of relief escaped his friend's lips. They got out of the exhibition hall, but it wasn't over yet. Rather, it was even more chaotic outside. Flare! They weren't just in the exhibition hall. Suho bit his lip. It seemed like the entire art museum was swarming with mist burns. They say it's a multiplying magical beast. This is really terrible. He thought they would be fine once they escaped the exhibition hall, but... Wah! Save me. When are the hunters coming? Students were huddled together, trembling in fear. The Hankook University Art Museum had a simple layout, stairs and an elevator. But mist burns were swarming in all the passages. People will be in danger if we go this way. Suho quickly assessed the situation. The escape routes were all blocked, and the magical beasts were increasing in number. He didn't know what the terrified people would do. Jumping out the window was also a bad idea. If they recklessly ran out and turned into magical beasts, it would only worsen the situation. Wouldn't it be better if I at least gave them a way to protect themselves? Suho raised the fire extinguisher and shouted, "Everyone, look here." Some of the frightened people looked at him. "There's a way to fight the monsters." Even more people turned their heads at those words, and they saw the fire extinguisher in Suho's hand. I see. Right, with a fire extinguisher. We can kill the monsters." A light returned to the people's unfocused eyes. Suho was embarrassed. We can't kill them with it. But does it matter? The important thing is that I gave people hope." Everyone scattered, desperately searching for fire extinguishers. Found it! Me too! Those who found fire extinguishers cheered. At the same time, those who weren't able to find any turned pale. There couldn't be that many on one floor, but this much was enough. Suho shouted at them, "Not everyone needs to have one. Those with fire extinguishers, follow me." Eek! Those holding fire extinguishers had dismayed expressions. Now they were the ones who had to fight on the front lines. Suho led the way and aimed the weapon at the mist burns. Pshh! Actions spoke louder than words. Grah! The mist burns' firepower noticeably weakened, and people's faces brightened. It's working! Okay, me too! Peace! Fire extinguishers began to spray from their hands, now filled with confidence. All right, let's push through like this. Suho continued to lead the way, pushing back the mist burns, and people carefully followed behind him, going down the stairs. It was then, crah! The problem was that mist burns were also coming from behind. Ooh-wah! There are more behind us. The people who were barely calming down panicked again. They rushed down the stairs in terror. Thud! Thud! Suho gritted his teeth. We're almost there. If he left them like this, they would all tumble down the stairs. Suho put down his friend and said, "You can go alone from here, right?" What are you going to do?" His friend looked at him with a worried face. Suho shouted to the people holding fire extinguishers with a determined expression, "I'll take care of the back, so those in front, please clear the way." All right, Suho turned around and went back up the stairs. I don't know what I'm doing. A non-awakened person acting like a hunter. But he couldn't help it. His body moved before he could think. Suho's fire extinguisher attacked the mist burns coming from behind, but then it stopped abruptly. Grah! The powder that was spraying out stopped, and at the same time, the mist burns that was being pushed back, and Suho's eyes met awkwardly in the air. Ha! Suho laughed in frustration. I'm screwed! The mist burn lunged at him. Flare! The blue flame engulfed him. He was about to be turned into a new mist burn. But whoosh! At that moment, the mist burn faced it. The deep abyss that lay dormant within Suho. The creature, born from the remnants of magic power, was a weak being that only acted on instinct. But at the same time, it was a troublesome magical beast that could become endlessly stronger and increase the number of its clones as long as it had enough fuel. Then what was the best fuel? Living beings, and among them, humans who had abundant life force were the best fuel that burned like dry firewood. In that sense, Suho was the perfect prey for the mist burn. But whoosh! The moment it engulfed his body, the mist burn was completely devoured by the jet-black abyss hidden within Suho. Krah! The bewildered creature looked around, an endless abyss stretching in all directions, and someone was staring at it from the deepest part of the abyss. The mist burn bristled its blue smoke and growled ferociously. Krah! Krah! But no matter how much it roared, all that came back was an empty echo. And then the mist burn suddenly realized it wasn't someone in the abyss, but the vast darkness itself, filling the surroundings, looking down at it, and even drooling as if looking at delicious food. The abyss opened its mouth wide towards the mist burn that was startled and tried to escape. Gulp! Whoosh! Huh! Suho had a puzzled expression. The mist burn that was attacking him suddenly dissipated into the air. Crackle! The human body that was its wick turned to ash and crumbled on the spot. It was then. Mistburn has been defeated. You have met the completion conditions for Secret Quest, Courage of the Weak. What? Suho's eyes widened at the messages that suddenly appeared. Level up! Flash! A brilliant light engulfed Suho's entire body. Suho's friend, Kim Dae-hyun, barely managed to escape the art museum. Thud. His legs, on which he had been walking with a limp, lost all their strength the moment he got outside. Daehyun's gaze, as he collapsed in front of the art museum, instinctively searched for Suho. Suho? Have you seen Suho? Who's that? Ah, that friend from earlier? People remembered the student who fought with a fire extinguisher, but Suho was nowhere to be seen. Someone spoke hesitantly. I saw him going back up to take care of the rear. Don't tell me. He hasn't come out yet? People murmured, and someone muttered with a hopeful voice, but he's a hunter, so he'll be fine, right? Suho is not a hunter, Daehyun shouted urgently. Those words were even more shocking. What? He's not a hunter? How could he, if he's not even a hunter? Their gazes simultaneously turned towards the art museum. Suho still hadn't come out. Just then, the hunters who received the report arrived. Here. It was the teaching assistant Lim, who ran away first, who brought the hunters. He breathed a sigh of relief as he saw those who escaped the art museum safely. Ha! Thank goodness! It seems everyone managed to escape. He tried to convince himself that he chose the best option as an E-rank hunter, but seeing the people, he felt guilty for being cowardly. But how did you all get out? The hunters who came with teaching assistant Lim looked at the people with puzzled expressions. So many survivors despite the mist burns appearing in that isolated space? It was fortunate, but they were curious about how it happened. There's still someone who hasn't escaped, Daehyun shouted with an urgent expression. Suho is still. Suho? Suho is still inside? Teaching assistant Lim was startled and turned towards the art museum. We would have all died if it weren't for Suho. Everyone's expressions turned somber at Daehyun's tearful words. The hunters asked in confusion, is that Suho a hunter? What's his rank? He's an ordinary person. What? An ordinary person how? It was the moment when the hunters were about to ask for more details. Rumble. An ominous tremor came from the art museum building. Everyone's heads turned towards it simultaneously. An ominous magic power was surging over the structure. Oh dear, has the erosion begun? Chapter 4, Chapter 03. The erosion was a phenomenon where the blue mist flowing from the gate contaminated the surroundings. The area tainted by the magic power from another dimension transformed into an environment suitable for magical beasts to live in. If the world beyond the gate was called a dungeon, the contaminated area around the gate was called a field-type dungeon. In any case, a place polluted like this was no different from a dungeon, and considering that, the Hankook University Art Museum was practically a land of death. It seems that the hunter's voice trailed off, but everyone could guess what came next. Meanwhile, Suho. This is that. Something unbelievable happened. Letters were floating in the air. The level-up system, which he only saw in his dreams a long time ago, appeared in reality. Oh my god, is this a dream again? No, this definitely wasn't a dream. The vivid sensation of reality proved that. Besides, the moment the level-up message appeared, the accumulated fatigue disappeared. Even the minor injuries from the mist burns were completely healed. But what was this? You have met the completion conditions for Secret Quest, Courage of the Weak. You have unread messages. The level-up system he experienced in his dreams only showed the level, and there were no separate messages like that. This felt more serious. As Suho looked at the notifications, the message box automatically opened. You have 2 unread messages. Congratulations on becoming a player in reality. Unread. A quest has appeared. Player. In reality? He checked the first message. Secret Quest, Courage of the Weak. You have proven your worth by gaining experience points in a non-awakened state. You advanced from level 0 to level 1, and you can now check your status window. Information. This system supports the player's growth. This is not tutorial mode. Please note that you only have 1 life in the real world. Tutorial mode? Is it referring to that dream? Suho instinctively realized that the dreams he had during puberty were all practice matches. The real competition started now. And just like in a real game, features that weren't supported in the tutorial were added. For example, that status window. Name, level 1. Job, none. Title, none. 110. Stats, strength 10. Stamina, 10. 10. Intelligence, sense 10. Available stat points 0. Skills, passive skills nulls. Ruler's authority 1. Suho's information was briefly displayed in the status window. Just like in a game, he immediately checked the next message. Quest: rescue the survivors. There are people near you waiting to be rescued. Rescue as many of them as possible. Rewards vary depending on the number of people rescued. Current number of survivors. Number rescued. Rewards vary depending on the number of people rescued. The second one was a quest window. This quest was also a system he had never experienced in his dreams. This really felt like a game, but this was reality. People were continuously dying even at this moment. Current number of survivors, 52. Current number of survivors, 51. Suho suddenly came to his senses as he looked at the status window. It was then. Grah! Ah! He was too focused on the status window. A mist burn had approached him and was attacking. Oh no! Suho instinctively swung his arm. Thud, and something amazing happened. Krah! The mist burn, hit by Suho's fist, groaned and was thrown back. Huh? He was greatly surprised as he looked at his own hand. It wasn't hot, even though he punched those blazing blue flames with his bare fist. Just then, another mist burn lunged from behind. Suho threw another punch without hesitation. Thud! It was the same this time as well. The mist burn was helplessly thrown back by an ordinary attack. Grah! The mist burn seemed bewildered too. This was clearly an insignificant human, but it hurt so much when it was hit. Nevertheless, the monster was a being that moved only on instinct. At the mistburn's scream, all the surrounding monsters flocked towards Suho. But he didn't waver in the slightest at that threatening sight, because he realized that they weren't much of a threat to him now. It was time for a counterattack. Thud! Suho charged towards them without hesitation. Thud! Thud, thud, thud! It was completely different from a typical raid. Originally, hunters should calmly assess the monster's strength, have the tanker block the front, and then have the dealer attack. But Suho ignored all that and just swung his fists, wrestling with the magical beasts. Nevertheless, the effect was undeniable. Mistburn has been defeated. Mistburn has been defeated. Mistburn has been defeated. Suho continued to move, defeating them one by one. Current number of survivors, 36. Even as this was happening, the number of survivors continued to decrease, which meant that the number of mistburns was increasing. The more their number rises, the faster people will die. He had to hurry. Suho searched every corner of the art museum and found the survivors. Get out of here! He sent them out of the building as soon as he discovered them. Number rescued. What? How are they all escaping? The hunters outside the art museum were surprised. Just as they finished checking their equipment and were about to enter, people were coming out on their own, one by one. Someone inside saved us. A student saved us. The hunters were even more surprised by that. Someone is fighting the magical beasts inside? Is there another hunter who already went in? Teaching assistant Lim, who heard that, tilted his head. That can't be. There are no awakened people among the students, and the other hunters haven't arrived yet. Dae-hyun, who was listening next to him, said with a hopeful voice, Could it be Suho? Suho? Teaching assistant Lim and the hunters exchanged glances. The probability of an ordinary person surviving in a field-type dungeon was extremely low, but they couldn't tell Dae-hyun that his friend was probably dead. But one of the survivors who had just exited the building knew Suho. That's right, it was Senior Suho who saved us. What? Suho? How? He was punching the magical beast with his bare hands. Bare hands? The hunters made concerned faces. It seemed like the survivors imagined something unbelievable because of how terrified they were. Fighting a mistburn with bare hands was too dangerous. His hands would be burned. It's suicide. Unless you were a hunter who could imbue your fists with magic power, you had to at least protect yourself with gauntlets to avoid getting burned. Anyway, it seemed certain that the student named Suho was saving people. The hunters muttered with serious expressions, Perhaps that student has awakened. Suho awakened? Teaching assistant Lim's gaze turned towards the art museum again. Even now, survivors were continuously coming out. Rescued by Suho, the hunters also finished preparing to enter the building. Team leader, the magic power measurement is complete. It seems to be a D-rank dungeon. The hunters Eyes gleamed with determination at those words. There would be magical beasts much stronger than Mistburns in a D-rank dungeon. Even if the student named Suho had just awakened, no one could guarantee how long a newbie without proper experience could last inside. All right, then we need to hurry. Whoosh! Mistburn has been defeated. It's almost over. Suho, who defeated all the visible Mistburns, was catching his breath. He was so tired that all he wanted was to lie down and rest. Nevertheless, his mind was clear. It was then, ding, level up. Suho's entire body was enveloped in a transparent light, and he felt revitalized. I can keep going with this. But just as he was about to move to find the vault, remaining people. Crash! The ceiling suddenly exploded above his head, debris and dust scattering in all directions. He was startled and rolled on the floor, but he couldn't avoid them completely. Blood trickled down Suho's forehead, whose wounds had just been healed when he became level 2. But that wasn't the problem. The real danger was the giant wolf that descended from the hole in the ceiling. Suho's mind cleared at its tremendous presence. There's no way I can win against this. He knew the moment he saw it, the survival instinct that every living being had told him that. He felt a primal fear, different from the Mistburns. The giant wolf looked down at Suho haughtily, the gaze of a predator looking at its trapped, injured prey. At the same time, a tremendous aura pressed down on him. Ugh! Suho gritted his teeth. He wasn't going to be overwhelmed by fear here. He would just do the best he could. If I can't escape, I'll attack first. Thud! Suho grabbed a nearby rock and threw it at the beast, but the giant wolf simply raised its paw and brushed off the attack as if it was nothing. Now's my chance! Suho lunged at the wolf and swung the fist that had beaten dozens of Mistburns to death, but it was no use. Crack! The giant wolf's jaw bit into his shoulder. Ugh! Suho gritted his teeth and punched the wolf's head while still being bitten. That was also useless. Bang! Suho was thrown to the ground and the giant wolf's paw arrogantly pinned him down. It was a fight he couldn't win from the beginning. Knowing that, the wolf simply savored its victory. And just as the ferocious fangs were about to tear into Suho's neck, a miracle happened. From the distant universe, high above in the sky, a black lightning bolt suddenly struck down. Kaboom! The ceiling exploded, and the space between the giant wolf and Suho was split in two. What appeared as the dust settled was the king of ants, his entire body enveloped in black steam. Beru was holding down the wolf's jaw with one hand, looking down at Suho haughtily. Chapter 5, Chapter 04. Suho was greatly shocked. The black monster that suddenly appeared had a jet-black exoskeleton serving as armor, and black steam was rising from its entire body. It was shaped like a giant ant with wings. The black smoke that flickered incessantly from its body was like shadows swaying in the light. The moment he saw it, memories flashed through Suho's mind. Don't tell me it's the one I saw in my dream. He definitely recognized this monster. The countless ants that appeared in his dreams long ago. The leader of those terrifying monsters looked exactly like that. But then, why was it doing this? That ant monster suddenly approached Suho and knelt on one knee. My liege, it is I, Beru. You may now rest assured. What? Suho's eyes widened. What was this situation? The ant was so large that even when it knelt, Suho had to look up at it. But then, before he could say anything, the black monster's demeanor suddenly changed. He saw Suho's condition, his body covered in wounds from the giant wolf's attack. At that moment, the black monster unleashed a storm-like killing intent from its entire body and raised its head. This damn mutt dared to bite this precious body. I'll tear your snout apart. And a terrifying roar, strong enough to shake the entire building, erupted from its mouth. The world turned into hell. Rumble. A terrifying killing intent engulfed everything. The giant wolf, pinned under the black monster, desperately raised its head, and it bit into the black monster's leg. The black monster's head creaked as it looked down. How dare you? A lowly insect dares to attack me. Black steam surged, and the black monster kicked the giant wolf at blinding speed, then not satisfied with only that it rammed its body into the beast. Thud! The giant wolf was helplessly thrown back with a scream, but the black monster was even faster and slammed the giant beast to the ground once again. Bang! Then it grabbed the wolf's legs with both hands. Rip! The wolf's body was torn in half. Black blood splattered in all directions, accompanied by a terrible scream. This was no longer a battle, just a one-sided massacre. The tyranny of a predator. The overwhelming predator roared madly again, trampling on the wolf's corpse. That cruel killing intent made all the hunters who had just entered the first floor of the art museum freeze. What? This killing intent? A D-rank dungeon, and this is... Shock and fear overwhelmed them. The building shook as if it were about to collapse. But Suho wasn't afraid of that cruel monster at all. Rather, it was so nostalgic. It stimulated something hidden deeply within his old memories. What? I feel like I'm about to remember something. Gumimi, what was this memory? He could hear the voice of a baby happily drawing ants in a sketchbook. Who? Crackle. Ugh! A sudden intense headache struck. Although he was confused, one thing was certain. Anyway, I seem to be alive. Thud. Suho finally collapsed as all the tension left his body. Keek, my liege, wake up. At that moment, Suho thought that the monster's embrace, rushing to him and holding him, was so warm. A smile spread across his lips as he lost consciousness. Ding! Completed quest, rescue the survivors. Number of survivors rescued, level up. Suho had a dream. It was about a baby being carried on the back of an ant. The baby in the dream was giggling happily, and when the baby laughed, the ant laughed with him. There were always ants wherever the baby went. An ant wearing an apron and feeding him from a bottle. An ant studying numbers with him. An ant covering him with a small blanket and taking a nap with him. If he couldn't see the ant, the baby would cry. And the ants would appear in an instant, shaking toys and soothing the child. The baby would stop crying and smile again. The ant wearing an apron approached the baby with teary eyes. My liege, you have grown so splendidly. I, Beru, am simply overwhelmed with emotion. And then the baby suddenly turned into the 22-year-old Suho, standing before the ant. Beru. Suho repeated the name inwardly. The ant looked at him with pride and wiped his teary eyes. Originally my purpose was to unseal your power, my liege, but to think you unsealed it on your own, as expected of our little monarch. Sob. Sob. Tears poured from Beru's eyes like from a faucet, overwhelmed with emotion. Sob. But the seal isn't completely broken. The most important things are stored in this place. Beru rummaged through his pockets and took out something. Ding! Obtained item, Shadow Dungeon key. Shadow Dungeon? What's this? Suho felt confused at the sudden message. But he was still dreaming Suho's voice didn't reach Beru. The ant placed the key in his hand and said, Use this key whenever you are ready, my liege. Everything that should have been yours is stored within. Beru knelt on one knee and held Suho's shoulders with both hands. But please remember one thing. A solemn tone and a gentle touch. Those contrasting emotions could be felt from his eyes as he looked at Suho. Great power always requires a great vessel. If an incompetent person is given power they can't handle, the vessel could break, unable to withstand the weight of that power. Great power. Great vessel. Suho repeated those words inwardly. In short, you need to increase the level of your vessel. Beru's eyes narrowed with a mischievous smile. And after finishing speaking, he got up again and bowed politely. Then, my liege, my mission ends here. I wish I could stay by your side longer, but even now, my comrades are eagerly waiting for me. And then he winked. I'm a pretty good healer too, you know. Healer? This beast, a healer. It was the most absurd thing Suho had heard recently. Then I'll be on my way now, until the day we meet again, please. Please be well. Beru's faint voice echoed. Wait, I still have questions. He hurriedly called out to him, but his voice wouldn't come out. At that moment, Suho woke up. Gasp, Ant! Suho, who jumped up, quickly looked around. White walls and the smell of disinfectant. Calm air surrounded him. Oh my, you're awake? The nurse, who was changing his IV drip, looked at Suho. This place is... It's a hospital. Don't you remember? A dungeon appeared at the school. Was it all a dream? Although he woke up, Suho had a blank expression. Just what part was a dream? The ant, the dungeon, or maybe the level up? Everything was confusing. Just then, he saw the news playing on the TV in the hospital room. The gate that occurred at Hankook University 2 days ago has been mostly cleared. Experts are analyzing why the number of casualties was miraculously low despite a dungeon break occurring in the middle of the city. 2 days have already passed. It seemed like the incident at the art museum wasn't a dream after all. Then was my childhood dream also real? Suho finally remembered. The memories of his childhood playing with giant ants. How could he have forgotten those happy moments? He felt a pang of sadness as he recalled the ant Beru from his dream. He left like that without even having a proper conversation. Suho looked up. The messages were floating before his eyes as if waiting for him. Completed quest. Rescue the survivors. Quest completion reward has arrived. Would you like to check the reward? Check. Suho chose check without hesitation. It was only right to claim the reward first, after almost dying several times. The following rewards are prepared. Reward 1, stat points 5. Reward 2, strength stat points +3. 8 stat points? Suho's eyes widened at the unexpectedly large reward. It seemed like every time he leveled up, all stats increased by 1 point each, so 8 additional stat points were a much greater amount than leveling up once. It was worth risking my life to do a good deed. Suho immediately checked his status window. Status window. Level 3. Job, none. Title, none. HP 140, 14. Strength, 15. Stamina, 12. Intelligence, 12. Available stat points, 5. Skills, passive skills, ruler's authority, 1. There were definitely many features added compared to the dreams he had in high school. Back then, only the level was displayed, and there was no detailed status window like this. Which stat should I increase? The 3 strength stat points were automatically applied, and he wondered where to invest the remaining ones. Suho carefully examined the other stats without investing the remaining points recklessly. And an information window appeared. Information. A stat that increases strength and speed. Increases attack power. Agility. A stat that increases dynamic vision and physical reaction speed. Increases reflexes and evasion rate. Stamina. A stat that increases maximum HP and recovery speed. Intelligence. A stat that increases maximum MP and MP recovery speed. Sense. A stat that increases the 5 senses. Increases danger perception ability. I'll decide later after thinking about it more. All the stats seemed important. Suho closed the status window and suddenly realized he was thirsty. Come to think of it, he had been unconscious for 2 days without drinking a single sip of water. He opened the small refrigerator next to the bed to find water. Click, and inside, Suho's eyes widened. Surprisingly, the shrunken Beru was peeling an apple inside the refrigerator. You! Beru, whose majestic body had become small and cute for some reason, held out the apple with an embarrassed expression. It was shaped like a rabbit. I couldn't go back because I ran out of mana. Chapter 6, Chapter 5. Suho looked at Beru with a dumbfounded expression. You said goodbye so dramatically, and now you can't go back? Ahem. Actually, the way to Earth was very long and dangerous. Countless enemies blocked my path, but I tore them all apart, and now I don't have the strength to return. Beru made excuses with an embarrassed expression. If my liege were here, my strength would be replenished in an instant, but I didn't expect that being this far away would make recharging impossible. Suho stared at Beru for a moment without saying anything. He said he was out of strength, but why was he ridiculously small compared to when he appeared so majestically at the art museum? He looks like a stuffed animal. Suho picked him up with one hand. Keek, Mini Beru, dangling from his fingers, was so light that he felt like a prize from a claw machine. But he continued to chatter even while in the air. You may not remember, but you are the sole heir to the great and almighty Shadow Monarch. Shadow Monarch? Who's that? Sung Jinwoo. Your father? Father? Suho doubted his ears for a moment. Yes, my father? Are you talking about my father who went missing? He didn't go missing. He went to space. Space all of a sudden? As Suho didn't know how to react, Beru suddenly spread his arms with a solemn expression. To explain briefly, a great war is currently taking place in space. Shadows made of black energy flickered from Beru's hands, creating an illusion. That black mist turned into numerous soldiers the size of fingernails, and even more monsters were attacking them. At the heart of it all stood a man with a particularly strong aura, also the size of a fingernail, of course. Your great father, Lord Sung Jinwoo, is commanding this war. Baru's hand pointed towards the enemies that Sung Jinwoo was blocking. And these guys are the minions of Itarim who came to devour our world whole. Itarim. Itarim are the gods of outer space, far away from Earth. Baru continued to speak with a solemn expression about how vicious and tenacious those Itarim bastards were. Although most of it was just cursing, it was certain that they were enemies who came to invade Earth. So you're saying that the magical beasts that poured out of the gates 2 years ago were because of Itarim? Suho felt strange as he listened to the explanation. Both of his parents were missing. Although he reported their disappearance a long time ago, the police couldn't find any clues. There was no trace of them, as if they had evaporated from the world, so he had half given up. But to suddenly hear they were in space, it was hard to believe, but the fact that a talking stuffed animal, no, a talking ant, existed before his eyes was already an unrealistic situation. Well, with dungeons and magical beasts present in this world, a space war didn't seem so far-fetched. Suho suddenly asked, "Then what about Mother? Did she also go to space?" No. Baru had a bewildered expression. "What? You're saying she didn't?" "No, she didn't. But then, where did Lady Hayen go?" Suho's expression hardened at Baru's reaction. "Mother also disappeared on the same day as Father, so I naturally thought they were together?" "You're saying Lady Hayen is missing? When? Where?" Baru belatedly jumped up in surprise. "How would I know?" Suho sighed softly. Baru flew to Earth from outer space where the war with Itarim was taking place. That process was truly difficult, not an exaggerated story from the Ant King. The assailants weren't pushovers who would just watch as an enemy marshal left the battlefield. He barely made it to Earth after breaking through that tremendous force, but Sung Jinwoo's wife, Cha Hae-in, was missing. Baru was greatly shocked. "We have to find Lady Hayen right away. Where would we even start looking?" "It's obvious who did this. Itarim. The apostles of Itarim on Earth must have set a trap for Lady Hayen. Suho's mother, Cha Hae-in, was undead, are the protection of the Shadow Monarch, so she couldn't be endangered by just anyone. But if something did happen, it must have involved a force equal to that of the Shadow Monarchs." Although Baru was making a fuss, Suho, for some reason, wasn't that concerned about his mother. Of course, he was very worried when she first disappeared, but the shock of learning his father's true identity was so great that he no longer saw his mother as an ordinary human. Come to think of it, I've never seen her unsettled. First of all, if she knew his father's identity from the beginning and still married him, why would she be concerned about anything? No, that's because Suho didn't hear Baru's muttering beside him. In any case, the Cha Hae-in that Suho remembered was always calm and unshakable. Perhaps that was why, although it might be just a groundless belief, he couldn't imagine his mother ever being in danger. But regardless of that, it was a relief that he found a clue to the mystery of his parents' disappearance. What should I do to find Mother? At Suho's question, Baru, still hanging from his hand, shouted strongly, "It's obvious. You have to become stronger as soon as possible." "Become stronger?" "Yes. Master won't be able to come to Earth for a while because of the war. In the end, the only one who can save Lady Hayen is you, young master. But right now you're weaker than an ant larva." "A ant larva?" Suho was a little hurt. Regardless, Baru dispelled all the shadow illusions he had created in the air, escaped from Suho's hand, and flew up. He pointed at Suho's feet and said, "So let's level up." Ding! A quest has arrived. A message window appeared before Suho's eyes. Quest, Trial of Shadow. Sung Suho, you are the son of the great Shadow Monarch. But now, all your innate talents are sealed. To handle that great power, you must prove your worth. Enter the Shadow Dungeon and prove your worth. Shadow Dungeon? Suho saw the quest window and immediately remembered the Shadow Dungeon key that Baru gave him in his dream. The Shadow Dungeon is the sanctuary of rest given to you, young master. It's a land of the dead where no living being can enter without the master's permission. Open your inventory. As Suho focused his mind, a translucent window unfolded before his eyes. There's even an inventory? This really is like a game. It was truly amazing. The dream during puberty was a tutorial, and now all the game-like functions were added. Suho reached out and took out the key. An information window appeared above the item. Acquisition difficulty. A key that allows you to enter the shadow dungeon. Can be used on Sung Suho's shadow. Can be used on my shadow? After reading the description, Suho's gaze fell to his feet. He knelt on one knee and lightly brought the tip of the key to his shadow. Whoosh! The key was sucked into the shadow. Now, hurry up and enter to claim all the power that should have been yours. Beru's eyes gleamed. Wait. Suho pulled the key back out and hurriedly changed his clothes. He took off the loose patient garments and slippers, found and put on his own outfit, and tied his shoelaces securely. A determined light appeared in his eyes as he looked down at his shadow again. All right, shall we go then? Keek, let's go. I'll assist you from the side, although I'm out of strength. He wasn't expecting much. Suho inserted the key into his shadow again. Click. Enter shadow dungeon. Enter. Whoosh. Suho's shadow spread out in all directions at his answer, and it began to indiscriminately devour everything in sight. The walls, the ceiling, and even the entire hospital building. Entered the shadow dungeon. Where is this? Suho suddenly found himself in a silent, black-and-white world of shadows, where all signs of life were absent. He stood before a lush yet desolate forest of black and white, which was, in reality, a ruai, Ned city with tall buildings whose walls were now overgrown with moss and vines. He suddenly recalled a book he read when he was young. The title was Earth After Humans, I think. That book was a documentary about Earth's self-purification. To roughly summarize the content, a city left unattended for a long time would be overgrown with grass and trees, eventually demolishing the buildings and turning into a forest. Just like this place. It kind of feels like a field-type dungeon. Welcome to the Shadow Dungeon. In that quietness, Beru, who followed Suho, flew up and saluted. This is the Shadow Dungeon? Suho felt a strange sensation as he looked around, as if he had entered an old horror movie set. Why does it feel so familiar? It was impossible for anyone to clearly remember their infancy, but the emotions and atmosphere of that time remained deep within their hearts even as they grew up. This black and white world, which would feel ominous to some, felt as comfortable as his mother's embrace to Suho. It was then, tingle. Killing intent? Suho's sense stat sent a warning. Whoosh! An axe flew from behind. Heek! The trial has begun. Dodge it. Hearing Beru's urgent shout, Suho immediately twisted his body. And with that momentum, he threw a roundhouse kick. Thud! Kek! A monster was thrown to the ground pathetically, hit by Suho's kick. A name tag like Beru's appeared above its head. Keek it! It was a hideous creature with green skin and a height of about 1 meter. Scout? Suho became alert as soon as he saw its name. If it's a scout, there might be others nearby. He had already experienced countless battles in the dreams he had during puberty. The survival instinct engraved in his body moved him. I have to kill it before it calls its comrades. Snap! Suho lunged before it could even get up. Keek, it's dangerous to fight bare-handed. Goblins are weak magical beasts, but you're even weaker now, my liege. I know. Thud. Ignoring Beru's words, Suho struck the goblin scout's hand and made it drop the axe it was holding. Kaya! Well done. Very well done. Beru flew above and clapped enthusiastically. Ah, you're so noisy. Grab. Obtained item, Imp Stone Axe. The moment Suho grabbed the axe handle, he swung it. Kek! Goblin Scout has been defeated. Suho cut off the goblin's head in an instant, but there was no time to rest. Whoosh! An ominous gust of air swept in from behind. As expected, there were more. At the sound of an arrow cutting through the wind, Suho instinctively reached out his hand. Ruler's authority. Grab. At that moment, a transparent hand sprouted from him and grabbed the flying arrow. Kick! That power, don't tell me. Beru was overjoyed at the sight of the arrow that stopped in midair. As expected of our young master, you finally awakened the power from your infancy. He vividly remembered the scene of Suho walking in the air as a baby. Chapter 7, Chapter 6, Sung Suho, 1-year-old. On the day that cute baby finally took his first steps, his house was in chaos, as is the case with all parents, but for a slightly different reason. Darling, Suho, our Suho. Suho's mother, Cha Haein, shouted in disbelief. What about Suho? He's flying. What? I'm telling you, Suho is flying around the house. Suho took his first steps not on the ground, but in the air. It was thanks to the ruler's authority, one of the special powers he inherited from his father, Sung Jinwoo. So, I miss those days. The 1-year-old Suho, who learned to fly before he could even walk. Beru wiped his nose, thinking that it was like a mythical hero's extraordinary birth story. But Earth at that time was a very peaceful world, and the power he inherited was created to destroy everything, so it was completely useless on this conflict-free Earth. No, it was worse than useless. It could make it impossible for him to live a normal life. So Sung Jinwoo decided to seal that power until Suho could control it. Now that the apostles of the outer gods are invading Earth, it is time to unleash the sealed power of our young master. Skill, ruler's authority, active skill, no mana required. Allows you to physically influence objects without direct contact. Ignoring Beru's fuss, Suho launched the arrow he was holding with the invisible hand in the opposite direction. I'll return this. Whoosh! Thud! Goblin Archer has been defeated. The Goblin Archer collapsed with his own arrow stuck in its neck, and then another goblin behind it was startled and turned to run away. Dash! Kiruk! You think I'll let you escape? Suho kicked off the ground and immediately chased after it. Flash! Huh? With a single leap, he instantly overtook the fleeing goblin, their eyes meeting in a shared moment of bewilderment mid-air. Yay! Of course your jumping ability is enhanced as your strength stat increases. You'll get used to it soon. Why was the voice of Beru explaining from above so annoying? Suho immediately slammed the axe down on the goblin's head. Thud! Goblin Scout has been defeated. After instantly hunting 2 goblins, Suho calmly wiped the splattered blood from his face with the back of his hand, his gaze sweeping the surroundings. The sudden battle had prevented him from fully taking in his environment, but he now realized that the black and white world was hostile. Malicious gazes emanated from all over the ruined city. Their palpable killing intent stimulated his sense stat. There are many. There are, very many. This is the land of death, a world that has been abandoned without a master for a long time. Wild magical beasts have made their nests in this land. Beru's explanation was accompanied by a truly wicked smile. If not for his cute appearance and minuscule size, he could have easily been mistaken as the true master of this place. But now, whoosh! Beru spread his short arms and declared in a majestic tone, the true master of this land has finally returned, so please reclaim it. Reclaim this land that was taken by those foolish invaders with your own power. Ding! A new quest window appeared before Suho. The inhabitants of the Shadow Dungeon will never acknowledge someone weak. As the master of this land, survive for the required time and prove your worth. Required time, form remaining, 4 hours 0 minutes seconds. Survival? Suho's eyebrows twitched as he read the quest. It was then, boo-hoo, boo! Goblin Centurion uses item Horn to summon his subordinates. Goblin Captain uses item Horn to summon his subordinates. Kihi! Karakuruk. Suho had a dumbfounded expression. Along with boisterous shouts, goblins began to appear from all corners of the city, and there were so many of them. Are you kidding me? You expect me to survive like this for 4 hours? Of course, there's no need to kill them all. You're only level 3 now, young M. Aster. Just try to survive somehow. You'll naturally level up and become stronger as you struggle. Beru winked and gave him a thumbs up. His face was filled with a fatherly smile, looking at his grown-up son with pride. Why is he so annoying? But now wasn't the time to think about that. Kirakuruk! They were closing in. Grab! Suho quickly snatched up a second axe from the goblin he had just killed. Item Goblin Stone Axe. Acquisition difficulty, Axe. Attack power, 5. A hand axe used by goblins. Item information appeared above the axe. 1 in each hand from now on. Suho's eyes gleamed like a demon's as he held a stone axe in each hand. But even this wasn't reassuring. The same weapons were in the hands of the swarming goblins. Suho quickly opened the status window and invested all 5 remaining stat points in strength. Strength, 15. Whoosh! Suho felt an intense surge of power in his hands. The strength stat increased both physical strength and speed. Considering that its value at level 1 was 10, his strength had doubled. With this power, he could run even faster. Swish! Using his newfound strength, Suho immediately turned and started running, to find terrain advantageous for fighting a large number of enemies. Wonderful. As expected, the weak have their own way of fighting. It's like watching an ant larva taking its first step. Wow, he is annoying. As Suho ran, the nostalgic feelings he had for Beru, who he hadn't seen in a long time, disappeared. Even his past as a devoted ant enthusiast faded away. I'll burn all my ant drawings when I go back. Suho firmly resolved to draw anteaters from now on. Still, he truly felt the effect of the strength stat. Wielding 2 axes, he was literally rampaging. Whoosh! Thud! He deflected a goblin's attack with his right axe. Crack! And he struck its neck with his left axe. Whoosh! Thud! He turned and struck the ankle of a goblin attacking from behind. Crack! And cut its neck. Goblin soldier has been defeated. Goblin spearman has been defeated. Key! While he killed 2 goblins instantly, the price was heavy, as axes and spears flew at Suho from all directions. He managed to dodge half of the incoming projectiles, but the remaining half found their mark. Thud! Thug! Coke! 160. It hurt. His injuries accumulated as his HP decreased, but Suho gritted his teeth and charged at them again. Whoosh! Crack! Bang! This time he cut down 3, and in the meantime he was hit 4 more times. Swish! He cut down another one. After being struck 3 more times, Suho's HP was now halved, and his body was covered in blood. But then, something happened. Ding! Learned skill, tenacity, L1. A skill? Suho's eyes widened. Hunters usually lived their entire lives with only the skills they were given upon awakening. To acquire a new skill, one needed a runestone, which was found very rarely and thus was very expensive. To think he would get something that precious for free during battle? Skill, tenacity skill. No mana required. You possess unwavering perseverance. Physical defense increases by 20%. He could feel the effect before even checking the skill description. The pain from his wounds subsided. Kiyak! Realizing Suho was a formidable opponent, the goblins scattered in all directions, screaming. As the sound of horns summoning reinforcements echoed from all around, he seized the opportunity to take cover behind a pillar and catch his breath. Wow, that hurts. Beru flew over and fluttered his feet at those words. Kick! Are you hurt, young master? But pain is good. You become stronger as you're hurt. It's admirable that you diligently endured the attacks and learned the tenacity skill. Suho, pressing down on the wound with his hand to stop the bleeding, stared at Beru. Kick! At the end of his gaze, a fist-sized ant floated, smiling brightly without a clue. Why don't you help instead of just watching? Beru, once a powerful being who had easily torn apart a giant wolf, seemed incredibly reliable not that long ago. However, after shrinking, he seemed completely unwilling to help, though Beru had his own reasons for this reluctance. Of course, I would love to, but I need to conserve my strength to return to outer space where the master is waiting. Beru was recovering his depleted strength on his own to prepare for his return. It was because Sung Jinwoo, who could recharge his magic power, was too far away. Besides, if I participate in the battle, the experience points that should go to you, young master, will decrease significantly. Wouldn't it be better to kill as many as possible and aim for a level up this time? Beru's words were not inherently wrong, but his constant, infuriating chattering from above was the problem. It wasn't that he seemed intentionally provocative. Rather, he simply lacked humanity, a likely consequence of not being human in the first place. Young master! They're coming again! Get up and fight! You're almost at the next level! Ruler's authority. Suho gritted his teeth and reached out his arm. An invisible hand flew forward and lifted a stone axe from one of the goblin corpses. He realized something during the battle. It seemed like the weight limit for the ruler's authority was about 10 kilograms. It was enough to easily lift a toddler, so of course it could also lift a stone axe. Perhaps he used this ability to fly around when he was young. Suho made the stone axe he lifted float and rotate around his body. This would at least provide a basic defense. Beru's eyes sparkled at the sight. Eee! To think you would use the ruler's authority like this? As expected, necessity is the mother of invention. That ant was definitely a demon. Level up! Time passed slowly, but after a long struggle, Covered in blood, his level gradually increased. And whenever he leveled up, the wounds from the goblin's axes, which were bleeding profusely, healed completely. His stamina, which felt like it was about to give out, was also instantly restored. And most importantly, Suho was getting stronger as his level increased. And finally, time remaining, 0 hours, second. Dash! Karuruk! Karuruk! As the timer ended, the goblins that had been tenaciously chasing Suho scattered and disappeared into the darkness. Is it over? Suho looked around, not letting his guard down. Goblin corpses were scattered around him. A heavy silence, like when he first came here, fell. Krah! You've worked hard. You're truly amazing. Clap, clap, clap. Baru broke the silence with enthusiastic applause. Those cunning bastards finally acknowledged you, young master. They must have realized that you're not as easy an opponent as they thought. Not as easy as they thought? How do I look? Well, you still look like an ant larva that would die if I flicked you. After all, you're only level 7 now. A damn larva. Still with that, he shouldn't have asked. It was then. Ding! Quest completion reward has arrived. Would you like to check the reward? Check. As soon as Suho answered, a message appeared. The following reward has been prepared. Shadow Extraction, Chapter 8, Chapter 07. Baru was looking forward to Suho's reaction upon receiving the Shadow Monarch's true power. Shadow Extraction. Oh my god, awesome. They're giving me this incredible ability as a reward? In the last quest, they gave stat points, and now they're giving a runestone that allows me to learn a skill. Wow, is it okay to be this generous? If Suho reacted like that, Baru was planning to say, Ahem, didn't I tell you? Everything for the young master is in this shadow dungeon. So he confidently declared with a smug expression, Ahem, first of all, this level-up system is a support mechanism for the young master's stable growth. It's an improved version of the same system that my liege used, allowing his mortal human body to fully accept the overwhelming power of the Shadow Monarch. Suho interrupted him and spoke. Hey, what? It's just a summoning skill? Suho's expression was one of clear disappointment. Baru was shocked. What was this absurd reaction? What are you talking about? To have this incredible power and react like that? No, but summoning skills are, Suho explained. Summoning skills were considered almost useless among hunters these days. The dungeons beyond the gates were truly dangerous places. If they were careless for even a moment, the hunters' necks would be torn apart by the magical beast's claws. The ground and ceiling were full of dangerous traps. No one could protect you in such a place. It wasn't a problem for combat-type hunters with strong bodies, but mages had physical abilities similar to ordinary people. In particular, those with summoning skills were the more vulnerable. Since they entrusted all the fighting to their summons, they were practically helpless burdens following behind. And that's not all. They consume a lot of mana. It's hard to find useful summons, and even if you manage to get one, it's not as strong as you'd expect. Baru, now stomping his feet with a frustrated and upset expression, was a far cry from the one who had previously mocked Suho's weak combat power. He was now the one riled up, causing Suho to feel a little sorry for him. Well, I'm sorry, but that's the reality. But still, it's good that I got the skill. Nu, don't try to comfort me with that condescending tone. This skill is one of a kind, don't you understand? Huh? Did your tone just change? Baru's historical drama tone was crumbling. All right, accept reward. A runestone materialized in Suho's hand. The skill will be absorbed when the runestone is broken. He broke the runestone without hesitation. Learn skill Shadow Extraction. Whoosh. Suho's shadow surged from under his feet, wrapped around him once, and disappeared. Snap. The skill window appeared before his eyes. Skill Shadow Extraction Level 1. Shadow Power. No mana required. Extracts mana from a lifeless body and turns it into a shadow soldier. The probability of extraction failure increases in proportion to the target stats. The probability of extraction failure increases in proportion to the time elapsed since the target's death. Number of shadows that can be extracted, 0. Creating shadow soldiers? Suho's gaze naturally shifted towards Baru, the shadow magical beast with black steam blazing from his body. That's correct. Baru's mouth stretched into a wide grin. It's a skill that allows you to create soldiers like me. Shadow extraction is the essence of the power that made the current Shadow Monarch Sung Jinwoo who he is. At that moment, Suho realized something about the numerous goblin corpses surrounding him. Black smoke was rising from the bodies he had slain over the past 4 hours. Shadow extraction may be used on this target. Shadow extraction may be used on this. Shadow extraction may be used on this target. The same message popped up repeatedly whenever he looked at the black smoke emanating from the dead bodies. Shadow soldiers, a kind of necroma, Enser skill. The concept of creating soldiers from corpses was similar to necromancers commonly seen in games. It still doesn't seem that good. He had seen it on the internet before. There were various types of summoning skills, summoning and taming spirits from nature, or domesticating and controlling living beasts. But the worst class among them was the necromancer, because of the restrictions. First, needing a corpse was the biggest problem. I would have to hunt that corpse myself first, so I can only control those weaker than me. He had to try it himself to understand it properly. Shadow extraction. The following message appeared at Suho's words. Specify a command for the shadow extraction skill. I have to specify a command for the skill? Suho pondered for a moment, and then Beru suddenly started squirming beside him with his eyes gleaming. Ahem? Why? Do you have something to say? When Suho looked at him, Beru looked away. Eris. Ahem! No! Cough, cough! Why was he suddenly coughing like that? Suho narrowed his eyes. He didn't know what Beru was trying to say, but he chose the word without hesitation. A command should be intuitive. Arise! As if he had been waiting, Beru clenched his fists and shouted something strange like, as expected. And then, something happened. Ki-hee! Suddenly, the sound of goblins' laughter echoed through the air. And at the same time, the shadows began to wriggle from the corpses lying on the ground, as if they were alive. Oh my God! Suho's eyes widened as he looked around. Ki-hit, kiruk-kiruk. Black hands stretched out from the shadows, accompanied by the incessant, mischievous laughter of villains. Grasping the ground, those hands pulled the rest of their forms from the darkness like demons returning from hell. Shadow extraction successful. Whoosh! 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 Just like that, 3 black goblins, their entire bodies made of boiling black steam, appeared before Suho. Shadow Goblin 1. They don't look that strong. The sight of 3 shadows lined up, waiting for his orders, didn't impress Suho. At this point, even Beru began to realize the vast difference in effectiveness between the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo's use of the shadow power, and its current application, despite it being the same ability. This disparity was natural. Sung Jinwoo was level 50 when he first obtained the power, whereas Suho was currently only level 7. No matter how good the skill, a low player level inevitably resulted in weaker performance. Well, the freshly extracted soldiers are usually a bit less powerful than they were in life. And their size is smaller, and of course, weaker. Just a little. And their speed. Beru muttered in a small voice. The shadow power is affected by the intelligence stat and level. It's a good skill later on, a truly amazing skill. Ha! There's no way to explain this. Yes, Suho, looking at the shadow goblins awaiting his orders, immediately prepared to return, startling Beru. At that very moment, a tremendous rumble emanated from his stomach. Growl. I've been starving for 2 days, Suho said seriously. Ah, that's right. Beru was overwhelmed by that sad truth. Whether it was a hunter or the Shadow Monarch, they all needed to eat to survive. You can enter this place anytime using the Shadow Dungeon key. Please rest for now. As Beru said, Suho took out the Shadow Dungeon key and inserted it into his shadow, just like when he entered. Exit the Shadow Dungeon? Exit. Click. The moment he turned the key, the shadow swallowed Suho. Whoosh! You have exited the Shadow Dungeon. Suho collapsed on the bed as soon as he returned to the real-world hospital. Ha! That was tough. Suho let out a deep sigh as he finally lay on the fluffy bed after so long. It had only been 4 hours in reality, but it felt like 4 days had passed. Although all his stamina was restored with the level up, he was mentally exhausted. Just then, the door to the hospital room opened and people in suits entered. Excuse me, is this Sung Suho's room? He immediately recognized who they were. Only one group would be searching for him in this situation. We're from the Hunter Association. As expected, the people in suits approached Suho and bowed. Mr. Sung Suho, we want to thank you first. What did I do to deserve thanks? Suho had a puzzled expression. Many people were saved thanks to you, Mr. Suho. We thank you on their behalf. Well, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was a big deal. Suddenly, whoa, you surprised me? The man who seemed to be the highest ranking among them pushed his face close to Suho's and smiled warmly. Mr. Sung Suho, you're truly amazing. A young man risking his life to save others in this harsh world. Sob. Ah, no. Excuse me? The sight of the large man taking out a handkerchief and wiping his tears was too much for Suho. Ahem. The employee next to him patted his back as if he was used to it and said, Team leader, stop crying and get to work. Ah, right. Haha, I've become more tearful with age. Mr. Sung Suho, I am team leader Han Jae-hyuk of the Hunter Association, and the reason we came here is... He grinned and held out the bulky manometer he brought. To measure your magic power, Mr. Suho. There was no doubt that Suho had awakened. He was found unconscious in the Hankook University Art Museum, which had become a field-type dungeon, and the area was littered with what appeared to be the remains of magical beasts. The reporters are also asking for information to write articles, Han Jae-hyuk added with a wink. Ah, yes. Suho put his hand on the manometer, and the gem embedded in the center emitted a faint light. He waited for a moment, and the measurement results came out. Oh, this is... Team leader Han Jae-hyuk stroked his chin in surprise after checking the results, but Suho showed no curiosity, his expression remaining unchanged. This lack of reaction was natural. The status window already displayed his magic power right before his eyes. Magic power level of 46. You're an E rank. The employees next to him were inwardly disappointed, although they didn't show it. They expected a fairly high rank since he was a hunter who achieved so much as soon as he awakened. But only E rank? However, team leader Han Jae-hyuk was different. A hunter's value isn't determined by their rank. Rather, it's even more amazing that he risked his life to save people despite being an E rank. Team leader Han Jae-hyuk smiled warmly and patted Suho's shoulder with his thick hand. Mr. Sung Suho, we look forward to your future endeavors. Ah, yes. The association employees finished their business and left the hospital room with light greetings. And as if on cue, Beru peeked his head out from Suho's shadow. Now, I shall explain to you about the future. Slide. The hospital room door opened again. Suho, Beru sulked and went back into the shadows. Chapter 9. Chapter 08. How are you feeling? You've been unconscious for 2 days. The person who entered the hospital room was none other than Assistant Professor Lim. He checked the complexion of Suho sitting on the bed and met the student's gaze. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for running away alone, he apologized immediately. To be fair, there was nothing a single E-class hunter could do in the same situation at that time. The first thing that Professor Lim learned after awakening as an E-class hunter was to run away as far as he could if he meets a monster. However, Suho, who was just an ordinary person at the time, was extremely heroic. He rescued people from such a dangerous place, risking his life. Professor Lim was greatly embarrassed of himself, thinking how cowardly he was as compared to Suho. Suho felt resolved with the professor's apology. It's all right, sir. A professor is in no place to apologize to someone like me. No, even if I had 10 mouths, I still have no excuses. After repeatedly apologizing, Professor Lim took out the hot porridge from the shopping bag he was carrying and served it in front of Suho. All right, you're hungry, aren't you? You must eat porridge if you have an empty stomach. Here the spoon. Oh, so quick-witted. Rumble. As soon as Suho saw the food, his stomach made a loud noise. It smelled like sesame oil. It's a beef porridge that looks and tastes good. Suho grabbed the spoon and started scooping up the porridge. Having starved for 2 days, the food tasted marvelous. After you finish that, would you like some apples? Somehow there were apples in the fridge. It turns out that Assistant Professor Lim had been visiting the hospital since the day Suho passed out. Professor had been taking care of me all throughout my life, but after leveling up, I don't feel sick at all. Suho was thinking of getting discharged today when Professor Lim asked something. Those guys who just left seemed to be members of the Hunters Association. What did they tell you? They measure my mana power level. Huh? Measure? Did they confirm that you have really awakened? Professor Lim's eyes widened. What was your mana level? They said the dungeon was D class, so you must be E class, according to them. Eh? Really? The older one couldn't believe it. Suho unfolded the mana level result sheet left by the association member a while ago. Oh, what? It's true. With mana level at 46, it's even on the lower range among E-class. Why do you look so disappointed? Were you expecting something? Wow, goosebumps. Were you really thinking I was going to say that I am a superb class hunter? No wonder you were being so kind. No, you rascal. If you were such a great hunter, you wouldn't have fainted in that dangerous place to begin with. I just thought you were at least D-class. See? You were expecting something else. Professor Lim felt so wronged that he even stood up. He put down the result sheet and tried to appease Suho. Hey, it's rather better. E-class is great, you punk. Don't you know that being an E-class hunter gives more stability than D-class? No. Hey. Of course you wouldn't. You also just gained your consciousness. From now on, trust and follow me. As an E-class old man, I will lead you to the world of E-class hunters. Dungeon raids are conducted with thorough division of labor. The raiders are the first to attack. The collectors follow from behind to retrieve the bodies of demons or monsters. The miners dig dungeon resources in the backline. Among those, E-class hunters take on any job except as raiders. In other words, E-class hunters are the most flexible in covering a task. It's true that they have more stability than half of D-class ones. D-class hunters are the weakest among the hunters who can enter the dungeon raid. In a way, they can be considered as the ones most exposed to risk. Meanwhile, E-class hunters are excluded from all combat activities, so they can earn their wages and at the same time be safe while doing so. Of course, some of them need urgent money, so they take risks and volunteer for the raider squad, but it is not common. Their hospital fees get more expensive, maybe if they have an acquaintance who is a healer or so. The next day, Suho was discharged from the hospital. He arrived at the Korea University Art Museum. I never thought I'd come here again. Suho looked up at the art museum, which was horribly half-destroyed because of Beru, and self-reflected. He went there today to work as a miner. Except for the Shadow Dungeon, it's the first real-world dungeon he went to, just because Professor Lim offered to assist him. Oh, for your information, all classes are temporarily non-face-to-face until the dungeon is completely raided. Suho, you're going to take a leave of absence since you are now a hunter, right? Of course, sir. Besides, the exhibit is now over as well as the semester. Okay, I'll stop by the assistant's office later and apply for a hunter leave of absence too. Should we start now? Assistant Professor Lim's eyes glimmered as he looked at Suho with full motivation. His stance posed a senior figure. Hey, today I will give you a quick guide on the life of a wise E-class hunter. First of all, miners. Showing off too much like a know-it-all. Ish! Beru muttered as he jumped out of Suho's shadow. Professor Lim was so startled he fell on his butt. Monster? Beru looked at the professor with a condescending gaze. Scaredy cat. Professor, I know more about hunters way better than you do. Better learn from me instead. He then jumped in front of Suho and spoke loudly with his arms spread wide. Hunters are described by their name itself. They hunt. Their goal is to slaughter, overcome, and devour the enemies, so they must kill again and again in order for their power to be Suho's grabbed Beru like a ball. Why did you suddenly come out? I felt the energy of the dungeon nearby. Right now, young master is as weak as a larva, so I'd be relieved if I could stay close and protect you. Swook, Beru's body stretched out and escaped from Suho's hand. He jumped on Suho's shoulder and flashed a pitiful look on his face. Suho could no longer be deceived. If I let this pass again, he'd never stop talking. Professor Lim, who finally collected himself, carefully pointed at Beru and asked, Suho, is that a summoner? No, Beru answered sternly in place of Suho. To be accurate, Beru was his father's summoned monster and not his. If you are not a summoner, then what are you, sir? Professor Lim seemed to be so intimidated that he started speaking with honorifics. Beru glared at him. I'm a guardian. Guardian? The professor tilted his head. That's right. In human terms, should I say, uncle? Hey, well, I had those moments. The professor didn't understand what Beru was talking about. Beru muttered an incomprehensible sound and glanced at Suho's face. Professor Lim ignored Beru and asked Suho directly, "Did you awaken as a hunter with summoning skills?" "Well, yeah, I guess that's how it went." Interesting. I have never seen an E-class hunter with that skill before." Professor Lim was lost for words. He didn't bother to talk about that skill being the most irrelevant anymore, not to mention Suho is an E-class on top of that. Minor among the most minors. The professor turned his gaze to Beru, who was on Suho's shoulder. He was just simply surprised at Beru's sudden appearance, but looking at him now, he didn't look useful, though. "Those gazes of yours are very offensive. Do you want me to pluck those eyes?" Professor Lim lowered his gaze. He seemed to be very observant, seeing how he's very sensitive with his surroundings. Surprisingly, he can also talk. That's pretty useful. Not all E-class hunters have that skill. You are still considered lucky. Just to share with you, my skill is escaping." "Oh, so that's why you're good at running away." Professor Lim felt hurt by Suho's remarks. It hue, RT, because it was true. Suho became a minor through Professor Lim's recommendation. "All right, let's work hard." Minors consist mostly of E-class hunters who looked like they were working at a construction site. "Newbie, come and take your pickaxe. Grab." Suho held the dungeon pickaxe with his hand. The man handing out the pickaxes smiled at him. "If it breaks while you're working, you can come back and get another one. But we would need to deduct the cost from your daily wage. So be careful. You're very young, but already very commendable. I heard you're still a student." "Hey, do you know this student?" Surprisingly, most of the miners recognized him. Most likely because of the news. Suho smiled bitterly as he recalled the news that was posted on the internet yesterday and today. Was the headline something like, "Hero of Korea University? Become an E-class hunter?" It was vague, so he didn't know if that was a compliment or not. If he had become a hero of the art museum as an ordinary person, he would have won a Brave Citizen award. But he awakened midway, so he was just recognized as a hunter. On top of that, he turned out to be part of the lowest hunter class. That kind of situation seemed to turn out well for these uncles, though. Haha, what a shame. If only I had awakened a class or two higher, my situation must be completely different. Don't be too sad because your class is low. We also eat and live well, don't we? Right. It's quite hard physically, but at least we don't need special skills aside from being good at using the pickaxe. Everyone was eager to give Suho words of advice, as it had been so long since there was a newcomer. Beru didn't like the warm atmosphere. "Young master, go and level up instead of dealing with these idiots. Don't waste your time." "Oh, is that a summoner?" "Kaya!" It's my first time seeing something like this. It would be cute having him around. But it's too small to be useful for mining. Miners gathered in awe at the sudden appearance of Beru. Beru was too cynical and ferocious. "Hey, don't come near me, you rude creatures. Young master is very weak, and he could die if he gets hurt. Young master, rest assured, I will protect you." Suho stared blankly at Beru. He didn't know if Beru was just being protective or sarcastic. "Wahaha, this summoner is reliable. Might as well try to work too." Beru's cuteness made the miners chuckle as they moved away in twos or threes holding their pickaxes. Suho got a brilliant idea. "Beru." "Yep, just give me your orders and I will slit the throats of those blasphemous bastards." "Don't do that. What can I do for you then?" "Take the goblin corpses out of the shadow dungeon and bring them here." Chapter 10, Chapter 09, Yes, young master. Beru, who responded to Suho's orders, tried to ask once more, "Are we going to stab those men behind their backs and kill them?" "What are you talking about? They are going to work." Beru jumped down and was enraged. What is he saying? He couldn't believe it. What on earth is this all about? The Shadow Monarch's power ability was so great and mighty only to be used for mining. In outer space, those millions of troops are fighting in a war. Such a futile thing to use it for mining here. I get that, but right now we only have 3 weak shadow goblins. We need to be practical. I'm pretty sure my father also worked this way before when he was weaker. Ha, but still. You also told me last night. Suho recalled the conversation he had with Beru the other day. They were on their way home after being discharged from the hospital. Beru spoke with a serious expression. "Young master, I will briefly summarize our mission. What the fist-sized creature said was too grand. Firstly, protect Earth from the monsters of outer space. You mean to go into the dungeon and catch the monsters, right? Yes. As you hunt monsters, your level will gradually rise, young master. The stronger you become, the safer Earth will be. Secondly, we must somehow find Miss Hain. Right. Do you have ways on how we can locate my mother? Unfortunately, there's none, but who knows? As we catch those extraterrestrial monsters, we might find some clues. In the end, this also meant entering the dungeon. Lastly, this is the most important one. Baru pointed at himself. I need to recover as soon as possible and return to the battlefield where His Majesty is. The balance being maintained there must be at stake as the core power, is missing. Suho was also curious. Baru's current small form was just a way to conserve his strength as much as possible, but his original form and power were a living nightmare itself. With such a huge amount of power missing, he couldn't imagine what the war was like. What should we do to regain your strength? The corners of Baru's mouth rose. Of course I need to eat. It was an absolutely evil and dreary smile. It's been so long, in the fragments of a world long forgotten now. He remembered the Queen of Ants. I'm going to make the strongest soldier. The Queen needed the strongest soldier to rebuild the kingdom that was being destroyed by humans and lead the kingdom's inhabitants. It went on for 6 months. She eventually conceived a life by gathering all her mana and nourishment. That determination and the main goal of exterminating all humans were combined, creating a terrible monster beyond imagination. The monster's innate skill is predation. It could make some of the mana and intellect of the target its own just by consuming the target. Baru spoke after recalling those memories. My natural skill is predation. Continuously devouring either human or mana gradually replenishes my strength. It's an inefficient method that was used in the past, but it's nothing much now. Both for humans and monsters. Suho felt it again. Baru definitely lacks humanity. He's not a human after all. The sight of Baru drooling as he mentioned eating humans was the perfect devilish image itself. Suho spoke firmly, but still, don't eat any humans. Huh. If you do, only eat bad people. Baru's eyes squinted at those words. As expected, like father, like son. His Majesty mentioned the same thing. A long time ago, he also ordered me to eat only the wicked if I were to consume humans. My father too? What's your standard for being wicked then? Well, of course. Bell smiled faintly. The ones who harm young master. Back to the present. That was what you told me. Baru brought up Suho's words. So of course, shouldn't you be entering the dungeon and leveling up? How can an E-class hunter enter a dungeon alone? You know very well that E-class hunters cannot be raiders. Suho was being extremely realistic. Professor Lim also explained that the only tasks E-class hunters can take are for production work. He was thinking of going for reassessment after his mana power level reaches D-class range. The division of hunter class was also a system that has recently been established, so there are still errors in the meter. So let's start with what we can do now. Suho smiled as he said that. Baru didn't feel good about that smile. Why are you smiling like that at me? Our third mission. Suho recalled what Baru said with a knowing smile. You must regain your mana as soon as possible, so you need to eat, right? Yes, whether humans or monsters. What about mana stone? Flinch. Baru's expression hardened. You said your skill is predation. Wouldn't your mana be recharged if you eat mana stone? That's right, but the stone has very little mana, so it only fills my stomach and the efficiency is not so. Is that a problem? You can just eat more than that. Suho smiled brightly at him. You can pick them up freely here. Suho passed through the gate with the miners. The appearance of the dungeon he entered was completely different from the Shadow Dungeon. The Shadow Dungeon was a vast ruined city that was so wide no one could even guess its size. This place, on the other hand, was a winding cave. In addition, each person had a pickaxe in their hands, so it felt like they were here, literally, to mine. Suho and the miners moved slowly as they moved forward. Inside the dungeon, the view was not very dark thanks to the luminescent mushrooms and moths everywhere. Quang, 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 quang! The sound of mining works echoed loudly. Perhaps because everyone had experience, the sound of pickaxing was very uniform and rhythmic. Suddenly, all of those sounds stopped at the same time. Huh? What's that? Everyone turned in that direction. There was Suho commanding the shadow goblins. 3 shadow goblins were pickaxing while laughing. There was Suho nagging them from behind. Amazing. So that's how the summoning skill works. No wonder people were surprised. The said skill was well known to be used in assisting in combat with the help of useful creatures. However, the summoners just followed behind Suho, who was giving instructions like a Pokemon trainer. It works though. Quang, 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 quang. The shadow goblins that Suho was giving commands to looked a little smaller and weaker than normal goblins. But they had enough strength to wield the pickaxe, and most of all, they never got tired no matter how much they worked. Whereas Suho needed to drain a bit of his mana to replenish his used strength. Wow, look! Those newbies are amazing! Ha! Suho shouted and laughed at Suho. It was all nonsense to say that the summoning skill is useless. It was such an incredible skill. Even now, as we're distracted, they might be able to dig up everything by themselves. We can't let that happen. Let's show our seniority in terms of experiences. The miners chuckled and started pickaxing again. It felt quite pleasant to see the short goblins working together next to each other. Such a nuisance. Seeing that warm situation, Baru at the back chewed the mana stone like a cookie. Meanwhile, at that same time, the raiders, made up of D-class or higher-class hunters, were raiding a place far deeper than the mining area. This dungeon is absolutely empty. I know, only wolf monsters have been popping up since earlier. Wolf skins don't pay. The collectors, who were following the raiders and skinning the monster corpses, weren't too happy. Of course, that's what they said, but that didn't mean that wolf skin was not worth any money. Besides, sometimes there were corpses with mana stones, so they had no choice but to work hard. Phew, we need to earn money either way. Wolf skins piled up on the wagon he had brought. Right, hen? Huh? It seems like there's something here. One of the hunters who, as walking in the cave in the lead, called his companions. Unexpectedly, there was a huge ruin in front of them. The hunters who saw that became very nervous and wary of their surroundings. Could it be that there's a boss-class monster here? Normally, there was little chance of powerful boss-class monsters appearing in D-class dungeons. However, the appearance of such a structure meant that something extraordinary could have happened, and that particularity would never have been a pleasant situation for the hunters. What's this? Did something happen to have a ruin like this? Shouldn't we go out and ask for more support? The hunters were making small noises. However, the leader of the raid intervened and looked around with a cautious expression. Shh, be quiet. For now, I haven't detected any monster in my radar skill. Really? How could there be a structure like this without any monsters? That's what we need to find out. A small smile formed on the captain's lips. Who knows? Maybe a treasure is hidden instead of a boss monster. Treasure! The hunter's eyes suddenly changed. Not only monsters' corpses and the mana stone could be found in the dungeon, there were also rare items. Those items were the only way to increase the strength of hunters whose levels would not increase once their class was determined. Captain, there's something here. Looking around, a sword was found stuck in the center of the ruins. It was a sword emanating unusual energy. This is crazy. The hunter's eyes were filled with greed at the same time. We hit the jackpot. Wow, what a weapon. They would have to take it outside and do an assessment to find out, but it was a weapon that looked great at first glance. Captain, I will get it. Among the hunters, the strongest man took the lead, spitting on both of his hands. Oh, wait, Kim Yongjun. Take precautions. The captain tried to dissuade him, but his hand had already grabbed the handle of the sword. Right then, a humming voice came into Kim Yongjun's head. Who dares covet the sword of the monarch? Chapter 11, Chapter 10. Who dares covet the sword of the monarch? Yongjun, what are you talking about? Strange words came out of Kim Yongjun's mouth as he grabbed the handle of the sword. The captain, who tried to stop him, instantly felt frightened. Swoosh! Yongjun took the sword. I'm asking who dared covet the sword of the monarch. His eyes were stained red as he repeated the same words. Yongjun, are you are? Slash! He slit the captain's throat. A fountain of blood gushed out. Silence passed over that absurd scene, as if time had stopped momentarily. Then, what? Act, Captain! The hunters behind came running in fear. Youngjin, why did you? Slash, another head got cut. Youngjin. Only then did they realize. Blood flowed from Kim Youngjin's eyes as he pointed the sword towards them. Who dares covet the sword of the monarch? He then laughed wickedly, seeing the bloodbath. Grumble. A wolf howl began to resonate around the ruins. Chills. Beru's eyes changed in an instant. He turned his head and stared hard at the darkness of the dungeon. What was that? What's wrong? Suho asked Beru, whose gaze was fixated in that area. I suddenly felt the presence of a monarch. Monarch? My father? No, there used to be not only one monarch, Beru explained. Originally, not only the Shadow Monarch, but several monarchs existed in this universe. However, when they invaded Earth, all of them were annihilated by the Shadow Monarch Sung Jinwoo. Then, that wasn't my father? If that was the case, my power would have been recharged in an instant, but my mana is still the same, and this energy, it's something that I know very well. Right then. Awoo! There was again another wolf howl. Starting with that, the howls of ferocious monsters began to be heard simultaneously from all directions. Grumble. Awoo! What's that? What is happening? The miners' complexions turned pale, and they looked around anxiously. Ah! Finally, screams were heard. It was the voice of people who went further to go mine. Ah! Every minute the screams were getting louder and closer. Then, awoo! A wolf suddenly attacked Suho from behind. Master! I know! Suho thrust the pickaxe he was holding into the wolf's mouth. Crack! What the hell? Its teeth were so hard that the pickaxe was crushed to pieces. But that was able to buy some time. Spit! As the wolf chewed up the pickaxe and spit it out, Suho gave an order to the shadow goblins. Attack! The 3 shadow goblins attacked the wolf at the same time. Krarung! But it was not enough. The shadow goblins were also holding the same mining pickaxe that Suho used, and the wolf also chewed those up. The bodies of the goblins were bitten and torn apart, too. But swoosh! Right then, the magic that escaped from Suho's body returned the bodies of the shadow goblins to their original state. The shadow goblins are immortal. They can be revived with young master's power. In an instant, the revived shadow goblins clung to the wolf's body. Then they stabbed the broken pickaxe into the wolf's body mercilessly. Slash! 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 Grrr! The wolf, which had been charging vigorously, tumbled on the floor, screaming unsightly. You have killed a steel-toothed lichen. No wonder it can chomp the pickaxe. However, just killing one isn't enough to alleviate the situation. The number of wolves that appeared was dozens, and the miners were being bitten helplessly by the wolves' steel teeth. Ack! Their teeth! The pickaxes were of no use in combat. Inventory. Suho hurriedly took out the goblin's stone axe he had acquired in his inventory and gave it to the shadow goblins one by one. Young master, even these stone axes will be shattered if bitten by the wolves. I have as many axes as I can, Suho shouted as he threw a stone axe at the wolf that was attacking the miner. Thuck! The stone axe flew and hit the wolf's body. Grr! It's not dead yet. Ruler's power. A transparent hand stretched out from Suho's hand. It then picked up the stone axe that had fallen on the floor and struck the wolf's head. Thuck! The monster burst out in agony and died. You have killed a steel-toothed lichen. That was just the beginning. Everyone, gather here. Suho screamed so that the confused miners could hear it. To save them, he jumped between the wolves without hesitation, holding a stone axe in both hands. The 3 shadow goblins following him raised their axes. However, the order that Suho gave to them was different. Don't attack, just bite and distract them. The shadow goblins were confused. Keep running away and lure all the wolves down that passageway. Killing the wolves one by one wouldn't be efficient. At Suho's command, the shadow goblins began to scream and lure the wolves away. In the process, their body was constantly bitten and torn, but they kept coming back to life, eventually weakening the wolves. Grrr! Awoo! In the end, most of the wolves became frantic chasing the 3 shadow goblins. And when they all went into the passageway in the corner, close the passage now! The miners who were sitting on the ground covered in wounds hurriedly got up. Then they brought all the carts of mana stones he had collected so far and piled them up in front of the passageway where the wolves entered. Huff! After somehow blocking the passage, the miners collapsed on the ground helplessly. What just happened? How did those monsters come all the way here? What happened to the raiders in front? Anxiety appeared on their faces. It was rare for monsters to reach the mining area far behind the raiders. Not unless... Could it be that all of the raiders died? No, because when they went inside, they knew that there were only wolves inside. This was only a D-class dungeon as well. Grr! Whoa! The wolves growled from behind the blocked passage. What should we do? At this rate, there was no guarantee that the way out would be safe. Beru? Suho called Beru, who had been staring into the depths of the dungeon ever since. Beru's expression was serious. Young master, it seems that something serious has happened. After all, I'm sensing the energy of the Beast Monarch. Beast Monarch? He is the king of the beasts who were killed at the hands of the Shadow Monarch. It seems that there is someone who is working behind those wolves. Are you saying that someone who has already died has come back to life? I can't completely figure it out. The power to rise from the dead is something only the Shadow Monarch can do in this universe. However, even with the shadow power of monarch-level beings, they could not be resurrected. They are not simply dead, but their existence itself has vanished. So it was nonsense that the extinct monarch would come back to life. This aura is most likely to be the remnants of the beast monarch that flowed through the dimensional rift. Beru, who finished explaining, looked at Suho resolutely. Young master, let's run away from here. Run away? Suho made a puzzled expression. Beru, who had been aiming to fight and kill all the time, is now showing the exact opposite. I've been constantly saying this, but young master's strength is less than that of larva right now. It's so weak that if you fall into it and the monarch class hits you, you'll die in an instant. We need to get out of here as soon as possible. Aren't you just upset that I gave you some mana stones instead? Suho remembered clearly. Since earlier, he had been calling Suho a larva, but now he's saying that Suho is at a level lower than that of a larva. Right then. Grumble. The hole they had been trying to block suddenly exploded. Ah! The passage opened. The miners, who were relieved that they had barely contained the wolves, moved immediately and grabbed their pickaxes. However, unlike the expectation that the wolves would come out all at once, a familiar face walked out of it. Mr. Kim Youngjun. A miner who recognized his face called him. He said that Youngjun was an acquaintance who was among the raiders. What the hell happened inside? We all almost died. He approached naturally, but Kim Youngjun just looked at him expressionlessly. The sword in his hand moved. Slash. Move out. Grab. Suho's ruler's power grabbed the back of the miner. But just like a flash, Kim Youngjun's sword already slit his neck. Slash. As a thin red line formed on his neck, his complexion turned white and he fell to the ground. Grrr. Red eyes staring at them arrogantly. Kim Youngjun opened his mouth. Who dares invade the habitat of the beast monarch? This is the sanctuary where the king of the great beasts dwelt. Thud. At that moment, an enormous amount of energy exploded from his whole body. Whoosh. An ominous aura making it impossible for everyone to even breathe covered the area. Effect, Fear, has been activated. The player's ability is reduced by 50% in 1 minute. Suho's body became heavy. We need to run away right now. Beru whispered hastily. Shh, if only I had my strength intact, there would have been no problem. It's not an exaggeration. Beru's power was completely exhausted from unlocking Suho's seal. Beru, who was muttering as if he were angry, looked at Suho's face and paused for a moment. Suho's gaze towards Kim Youngjun was burning hot. Right then. A quest has arrived. The quest window appeared in front of Suho. Urgent quest, defeat the enemy. There are beings with intent to kill the player around. Kill it to secure the player's safety. Number of enemies to kill, 1. Number of enemies killed, 0. Beru spoke in an urgent tone. Master, just ignore this quest. The weak have their own way of fighting. Like before, let's run away using the shadow goblins as a shield. Okay, Suho muttered in a soft voice. Beru's eyes brightened. I will guide you on the way out. Let's fight this. What? Chapter 12, Chapter 11. Suho's eyes wandered around. The miners were frozen in fear. They were the same smiley, chatty, and hard-working people earlier today. That man was the man who handed him water, saying that he must have been having a lot of trouble, and that man was also the one who demonstrated how to pickaxe. You want me to leave these people and run alone? Young master, I don't care about the lives of those humans. I have a mission, Baru said firmly. The life of Suho, the son of the Shadow Monarch, was more precious to Beru than the lives of anyone on Earth. Even if all the humans in this place died, it was Beru's mission to keep Suho alive and return. I'm not just saying this out of a sense of justice. Suho glanced around. All passageways are blocked anyway. Grrr! Before they knew it, numerous wolves were camped in the passage leading out of the dungeon. In order to escape from this place, there was no choice but to defeat the enemy. Also, it doesn't seem like there's any other way. Suho smiled faintly as he saw Kim Youngjun leading countless wolves. Seeing this, Beru suddenly felt strange. Looking at Suho, who he thought was weak, the appearance of Sung Jinwoo from a long time ago overlapped. The ghost of the beast monarch was feeling a sense of exaltation. When he woke up from a long sleep, his master was nowhere to be seen, and he was surrounded by insignificant humans. That's funny. They're like weak worms. Even though I only shed a little bit of my energy, they were already shaking with fear. Ah, just how weak are they? They must be killed then. In this world, the weak get eaten and the strong take everything. Drool. Kim Youngjun's body was dominated by hunger. He licked his lips looking at the small creatures. You weak bugs, you guys don't deserve to live. It would be much more useful if you die and become wolf food. At that moment, Kim Youngjun's hand moved by itself. Then, he swung the sword at the humans. Die! Slash! But it didn't go as planned. Suddenly, a shadow goblin jumped in between and got cut instead. Its body was split in half and then flashed a wronged expression on its face. It was as if it wasn't sacrificing on its own will. What's with you little ones? The ghost looked at the goblins blocking his way with a puzzled expression. Kirk! The ghost thought that those little guys seemed to have lost their fears looking at how they attacked him. Your kind are the ones who don't know the strong. Well, it's only natural to see such a survival instinct seeing the beast monarch. Slash! He swung his sword mercilessly and cut down the goblins again. But what is this? The bodies of the fallen goblins were instantly healed, and they stood up again. Huh? The useless attack made the ghost look annoyed. The wolves under his command rushed at the same time and tore the goblins' bodies again without mercy. He stopped paying attention to them and looked back at the humans. The miners were running. Funny, are those buggy-like insignificant creatures struggling to survive? Unfortunately, however, the direction they were heading was not the way out, but a passage deeper into the dungeon. Go after them! Grrr! At his command, numerous wolves ran after them. The ghost looked in the opposite direction. It was outside the dungeon, where there was a gate to Earth. What is that place? There could be countless lives out there. Each one of them was weak, but because of that, his appetite grew even more. The weak should be eaten. The ghost looked down at his own body. A hunter named Kim Youngjun. The human's body was already dead, but from now on it would become his own body and be used for his own advantage. Alas, what an honor for this lowly fellow. I will eat your fill. I will personally eat all the creatures in that world beyond. The ghost's eyes glowed greedily. He walked slowly, dragging a number of wolves with him. But that was then. Swoosh! Ah! A stone axe suddenly flew, past the back of his head. Sensing the presence, the ghost shook his sword with a disapproving expression and brushed off the attack. Such a pity. I almost hit him. Almost. The ghost looked at the human who threw the stone axe with a puzzled expression. Right then, another stone axe flew from Suho's hand. Is this a struggle of the weak? Grab. The ghost raised his sword again and deflected the attack. When he blocked it, another came flying again. Swoosh! No. Bounced off again. Then it flew again. Hey! Bounced off again. Then again. How many axes do you have? In the end, the ghost couldn't stand it and burst into anger. Meanwhile, axes came flying again. Kill him first. Growl. The wolves, who were about to leave the gate at the command of the ghost, turned around at the same time and started chasing after Suho. Young master, now you have to run. Okay, let's hide. Stay there, you bastard. Growl. Awoo. Suho escaped the wolves and hid in the cave again. However, there were too many wolves chasing them, and the speed was so fast that they were surrounded in an instant. Tsk. In the end, small things end up being eaten like this. The ghost laughed at Suho and ordered his death. Kill him. Tear that bastard limb from limb and chew to the bone. Grr, the wolves attacked Suho all at once. At that moment, Suho smiled and inserted the key into his shadow. Clack, do you want to enter the shadow dungeon? Wine, yes! Entering the shadow dungeon, swoosh! At that moment, Suho's shadow engulfed him. Whiff! Huh? The ghost looked around in bewilderment. Right in front of his eyes, the prey had disappeared without a trace. What? Where the hell did he hide? Find him! At those words, the wolves sniffed and began tracking Suho's scent. Kirk! Of course he couldn't find him. What was that? How can he hide without leaving even a bit of his scent? The ghost dragged the wolves around to find Suho's whereabouts. Peek! At the spot where Suho had disappeared, Beru peeked out and looked around. He took advantage of that moment and whispered to the shadow. You can come out now. Swoosh! Exited from the shadow dungeon. Suho appeared from the shadows again, and as soon as he came out, he threw a stone axe at the back of the ghost's head. What? The ghost looked back in surprise. Swoosh! Ting! He managed to deflect the stone axe, and his face stiffened when he saw Suho, who suddenly appeared. There you are, man. You must be hiding some. Swoosh! Oh, stop throwing those. The ghost lost his composure at Suho's throwing a stone axe whenever he had a chance. Kill him! Kill him! Growl! The chase started again like that. However, when Suho was surrounded by them, he immediately hid in the shadow dungeon. Whiff! Where did you go again, bastard? The ghost was enraged. Right then, a stone axe flew into the back of his head. Swoosh! I'm telling you, that won't work. Meanwhile, the miners who watched Suho from a distance were at a loss for words. How did he... What kind of skill is that? They knew that Suho was an E-class hunter. They were also well aware of the fact that the E-class was of no use in combat. But what was happening didn't make sense. I don't know anymore if he's weak or strong. Something is strange, but how can he fight so well? But isn't this for the better in the first place? At least one thing was clear. Suho's skill was very specialized in mocking enemies. Besides, it wasn't just skill. That image of him provoking without being intimidated at all against the existence that exudes fierce energy. It may not be a skill, but it's good to have innate guts. Or maybe he just has a bad personality. In a desperate situation like now, Suho was the only hope. By the way, wasn't that new recruit a summoning hunter? Ah, yes. Even up until now, he hasn't used any summoning skills. You saw it earlier. The summoners disappeared at once. This is why the summoning skak. Ill isn't good. If only it was a combat skill rather than a summoning skill. The miners who saw Suho's skill firsthand burst into sighs of pity. He has a fighting sense, just like what happened in the art museum just a few days ago. Suho had a natural sense as a hunter. Even if they had awakened high abilities, there were one or two hunters who died in battle because they did not have that sense of battle. They pitied Suho. If only he wasn't a summoning hunter, he would have been a really great hunter. Beru, who was listening to their conversation from afar, burst into anger. Keek! They're treating shadow powers like this. But it wasn't the time yet. At the current level of Suho, the shadow soldiers would not be able to demonstrate their abilities properly. In addition, Suho's remarkably low mana was also a problem. The true capability of the shadow soldiers was to be an immortal army that resurrects endlessly. However, that was only possible when Suho's mana could sustain it. Due to the previous battle, Suho's mana was almost exhausted, and because of that, the shadow goblins who worked hard today with a pickaxe had already disappeared. But Beru's eyes shone brightly. At the same time, Suho smiled and muttered, "Creating a shadow soldier itself does not cost any mana." It was then. Among the many wolves that followed the ghost that was chasing after Suho, he felt a suspicious presence. Basic class. Basic class. Basic class. Their identities were none other than Suho's new soldiers wearing wolf skins that the collectors took care of. What? The shadow wolves gnawed at the ghost's leg while he was busy trying to hit the flying stone axe. The startled ghost cut them down with his sword. As the wolf's skin was cut, it revealed the shadow wolves hazing with black energy. Growl! How dare you, insignificant bastards! The specter, who was extremely enraged, swung his sword and slashed the shadow wolves to pieces in an instant. They could never be resurrected again with the exhausted mana of checkmate. Suddenly, Suho, who had come close to the ghost, mercilessly struck down the stone axe in both of his hands. Slash. Chapter 13. Chapter 12. Ack! The ghost looked down at his body in disbelief. 2 axes were stuck in his chest. This is why a weak human body. Thud. The body of Kim Yongjun fell backward. Number of enemies to be defeated. Number of enemies killed. The quest is over. You have completed urgent quest defeat the enemy. Your level increased. Phew, Suho's exhausted strength quickly returned to its optimal condition. However, Suho was not vigilant. He killed Kim Yongjun, but it was the sword he was holding that controlled his body. Ruler's power. Slash! A stone axe fell from the air and cut off the arm of Kim Yongjun, who was holding the sword. Great, this sword is the main thing. Baru flew over and lifted the sword that Kim Yongjun was holding. At that moment, a piercing voice echoed in Baru's head. Who dares covet the sword of the monarch? Young master, can I eat this sword? Wait a second. Won't we settle it through a nice conversation? The voice of the sword suddenly became friendly. Baru's expression as he looked at it and licked his lips was so genuine. Meanwhile, Suho was not in a situation where he could answer Baru's words. Growl. The ghost was taken care of. However, with his previous order, the wolves were attacking Suho all at once. Suho regained his strength and mana because of the level up, and as all of his stats went up by 1, his movements were improved compared to before. Slash! Slash! You have killed a steel-tooth lichen. You have killed a steel-tooth lichen. Suho shouted at Baru as he killed the attacking wolves one by one. This weapon is too short. Can I use that sword? Who dares cove? Of course it is possible. It is impossible for a ghost like this to corrupt the mind of young master. Okay. Suho took the sword from Baru. Item Rakan's Fang has been obtained. As if waiting for that moment, the ghost of the sword roared ferociously. Who dares covet the sword of the monarch? I will devour your body. Swoosh! Red energy radiated from the sword and attacked Suho. Then, a shadow rose from under Suho's feet and engulfed the sword. What is this energy? The disconcerted ghost's voice grew smaller and smaller. This can't be the Shadow Monarch. The ghost couldn't believe it. He got the sword of the beast monarch. It wasn't just a normal sword, it was an alter ego created by the monarch. It was absurd that there was a human being who inherited that great power. Even more so, doesn't this human look weak at a glance? Heh, no matter how weak young master is, there's no way he'll be overpowered by something insignificant. What? Insignificant. Oh, so noisy. Suho ignored the ghost's screams and swung his sword at the wolves. Slash! The wolves were cut by the sword. Its sturdiness is on a whole different level than pickaxes and stone axes that were shattered by their steel teeth. Still, the weapon is good. Of course it's good. Do you know whose sword it is? In the midst of this, the ghost still showed pride. Suho was still surrounded, but he had a little more time to spare, and immediately checked the reward. Come out with anything that helps. The stats are good too. The completion reward has arrived. Do you want to check the reward? Yes. The following reward is prepared. Reward. Runestone, Blade Storm. It's a skill. It was the best reward. Suho immediately checked the reward. Breaking the runestone absorbs the skill. Ting, you have acquired skill Blade Storm. When the runes were broken, the power of the storm came throughout Suho's body. Woo, this is... Suho instinctively realized how to use this skill. How should the skill be used? The situation was urgent, so Suho used the skill right away. Ha! Blade Storm is used. Whoosh! At that moment, a fierce wind blew from the sword held by Suho. The Blade Storm attacked the wolves in front of Suho at the same time. Slash! Slash! I have killed a steel-tooth lichen. You have killed a steel-tooth lichen. Multiple messages appeared. Wow. Suho was amazed. More than 10 wolves died at the same time. The wolves who barely survived the tremendous destructive force were frightened and started to run away. Suho had no intention of chasing them anymore. It was because the mana used for this skill had run out. Skill, Blade Storm 1, active skill. Requires 50 mana. The power of the raging wind dwells in the sword, can attack multiple enemies simultaneously. It required an enormous amount of mana, but the effect was just as great. Suho was looking at the skills window. That sight made Baru speechless. Are you amazed by that skill? Shadow power is thousands or tens of thousands of times greater than that. What are you talking about? That power came out because of a great sword and not a skill. The ghost of the sword was no less proud than Beru. Both of you, be quiet. It's a historic moment that I finally got my attack skills. No, I am more. Suho ignored the two quarreling with each other and went back to the miners who were hiding far away. Are you okay? Newbie, you? The miners were astonished at the skill they saw right in front of them. It's a skill that causes a storm. If you had such a skill, why haven't you been using it? Ah! At the reaction of the men, Suho put on an embarrassed expression. They most likely wouldn't believe it if he told them that he acquired a new skill during the battle. If I use it even once, I will run out of mana. That's why I saved it until the last minute. Oh! They admired him even more because of those words. Suho just awakened as a hunter a few days ago. It was also his first time inside a dungeon, but he planned to use his greatest card at the very end. He seemed like an experienced hunter who went into dungeons hundreds of times. No way, if that was the case, was his mana level even thoroughly measured. Even that running away and hiding plans. Just how big was the picture you were drawing? What? Haha, nothing. You don't have to tell me. We asked you something we shouldn't have. Anyway, thank you for saving us. If it weren't for you, we really wouldn't have seen the sun tomorrow. The miners let out a sigh of relief, wondering if they could finally feel the fact that they were alive. It was that evening that the accident at the Korea University dungeon became known. What? The raiders have been wiped out? Only in a D-class dungeon? Wasn't the leader of the hunters who entered their C-class? What the hell happened? Reporters rushed to Korea University to find out the truth of the incident. However, the miners who managed to survive there had long since left. Haha, we will let you know. Of course, Professor Lim was still working in the assistant office. Thanks to his escaping skill, it was once again put to good use. He looked in good condition without a single wound. Great, this is my chance to pay off my debt to Suho. Assistant Professor Lim told reporters everything he knew about the incident in the dungeon. In particular, more details about Suho's performance. It was up to the reporters to believe or not believe. What? An E-class hunter? And a summoning hunter? Does that make sense? We heard that one C-class hunter died in this situation. How can such a low-level hunter? Wait, what's wrong with being an E-class hunter, or even a summoning hunter? Are you looking down on us? Assistant Professor Lim was furious at the reporters' reactions. I'm going to write down all of your comments and post them to the E-class hunter community. Why are you so angry? All right, calm down. In response to Assistant Professor Lim's reaction, the reporters began to appease him while having cold sweats. The E-class hunter community was a tricky thing for reporters. There are a lot of comments. There are no R, as where E-class hunters weren't mentioned. As a result, the community was a place where trivial information came and went, and they got hated just once. It would be quite too much to handle for reporters. Anyway, that hunter named Sung Suho played the biggest role, right? He used the summoned creatures to divert the attention and cut off the arm of the hunter, who became a ghost. To sum it up, it was an extremely summoning hunter-like battle method. It did seem that what happened was too good for a summoning hunter, but the reporters perceived it as a favoritism of Assistant Professor Lim, who defended his art student. Well, whatever. We have secured content for the article anyway. The content was that an E-class hunter used his wits to solve the case, but people's reactions were outrageous. Summoning skill? Plus an E-class hunter? Worst of the worst. Are they making a summoning hunter go viral? Do the reporters have nothing to write about these days? Anyway, that E-class hunter is a summoning hunter too. But didn't he save students there a few days ago? Looks like he used that skill back then too. He's now called the viral summoning hunter, and some of the guilds who saw the article showed interest in Suho. Are E-class good enough? Even if the journalists exaggerate a little bit, there is still a lot beyond expectation among the E-class. Isn't it about time to select some of our porters? Besides that, the collector team asked for more staff. Good, these days E-class hunters are all taken from here and there, so there aren't many freelancers to ask. We also have to hire a few E-class hunters as full-time workers. A full-time job? Am I too old-fashioned? Still, E-class hunters seem to be perfect for contract jobs or day jobs. Anyway, young guys these days. Anyway, I will send a scouting offer to this hunter named Sung Suho. All right then. How happy would he be if we called? He's a lucky one. With that, the Black Tortoise Guild, a fairly large guild in Korea, offered a full-time job to Sung Suho. What a great opportunity for a newbie who just awakened. Other E-class hunters might be envious if they knew. After some time. What? Manager Lee Young-ho of the Black Tortoise Guild's second management division doubted his ears. He said no to our offer? Yes. Does that make sense? An E-class newbie rejecting the Black Tortoise Guild offer? No way. Did White Tiger get him first? Maybe. Right, the White Tiger guys can do that. But isn't it too much if they offered something higher than ours to an E-class hunter? Do they have money rotting somewhere? Manager Lee Young-ho can only curse at the clueless White Tiger Guild. Chapter 14. Chapter 13. Meanwhile, you have killed a steel-tooth lichen. You have killed a steel-tooth lichen. Right after Suho acquired the Sword of the Monarch, he continued to hunt wolves and move forward in order to clear the way out of the dungeon. Since the raiders were wiped out, there was only one hunter who could fight. Suho kept swinging his sword while protecting those who were carefully following him. Level up. He leveled up again. Hey, aren't you tired? Yeah, I think I'm still fine. Wow. The miners were amazed beyond admiration at Suho's ability to wield the sword without rest. In the eyes of those who did not know that strength is restored when you level up, Suho was seen as a huge monster with infinite power. I mean, how couldn't he be? He's just a human like us. Don't tell me he also has great mental fortitude? It's clear that he's not showing any signs of distress because he's afraid we'll worry. They remembered that Suho was a young hero who had rescued people until he fainted in this very art museum just a few days ago. But this time, they are in a situation where they are being protected. How can the same E-class hunter be so different? Even how fast he levels up. There was really no other way to explain this, other than that his mental strength and will are great, regardless of his class or ability. Well, of course, he's also leveling up. Young master, I can see the gate. Beru pointed at the far end of the cave. We're saved! The miners, who were filled with tension and fear, were finally relieved. Watching them run away, Suho also wiped away his sweat. Aren't you going out? One of them turned around and called for Suho. Ah, no, I will stay here and bring out any remaining hunters if there are any. Are you okay? You must already be at your limit. I can still hold out. In fact, he was in a very good condition, but he had no choice but to pretend to be overdoing it due to the current situation. He could feel Beru's gaze from behind, but Suho pretended otherwise. Suho, who remained in the dungeon, looked at the sword and asked, "Take me to where you were." Suho pretended to pass the sword to Beru. "Beru, would you like to just eat this?" Just a moment. The voice answered urgently. It was because from earlier on, he kept seeing Beru picking up nearby mana stones and chewing them. "Why do you want to go where I was? If there are any survivors, I will try to save them. I killed them all. No, there might be someone who is still lucky enough to survive." When Suho handed the sword back to Beru, the voice was quick to change its words. "Go left." Suho moved along with the guidance of the voice. In the process, monsters continued to attack, but now there was no need to protect people, so there were no restrictions on his actions. After a while, unidentified remains of people bleeding and dying appeared in front of Suho. "Here you are." Suho checked people one by one. "They are all dead." "What did I say? I couldn't help it either. I have a mission to protect this sanctuary. Besides, since I'm such a good one." Feeling the gaze of Suho and Beru, the voice made an excuse. At that time, information about this sword appeared in front of Suho's eyes. Item, Rakan's Fang. Difficulty to obtain. Type, sword attack power 30. A sword made from the fangs of Rakan, the king of wolves. The ghost of Rakan dwells in it, so if someone of a lower level possesses it, the body may be taken away. Contempt for the weak effect puts the designated opponent into fear for 1 minute. All stats 50%. mortal wound effect, inflicts more than twice as much fatal damage with a 15% chance. Compared to the goblin's stone axe, it was a sword with considerably higher attack power. It could also be that the hunters here were killed abruptly due to panic, as they did not expect that their colleague's body was possessed. It's a pretty good sword, but with such a petty it exerts more power when dealing with those weaker than of their own level. You're being mean. What's wrong with the strong preying on the weak? What kind of hunter in the world would go after a prey stronger than himself? Suho listened to the conversation between the two and collected the bodies of the hunters one by one. He removed all the monster goods in the carts that the dead collectors were pulling and put the bodies in it. Surprisingly, Suho saw black smoke rising from the corpses. Those were their shadows. Shadow extraction is possible. Extraction is possible. Suho heard the grievous cries of the dead hunters. If you wish, these people can also be recruited as your soldiers, young master. It's okay. Suho listened to their screams and silently collected the corpses. After things settled down, Beru looked around the area and then went to Suho. I've been looking around to see if there are other relics of the Fang Monarch besides this sword, but nothing special. Fang Monarch? Suho asked. Beru then pulled out black shadows from his hands and created small shadow puppets the size of fingernails. The dolls stretched one by one and took on a certain shape. At some point in time, there used to be several other monarchs in this universe besides the Shadow Monarch Sung Jinwoo, your father. The Beast Monarch, Fang Monarch, Insect Monarch, Plague Monarch, all those monarchs flocked to Earth. Among them, one doll the size of a fingernail exudes a particularly strong energy, mercilessly cutting down the other dolls. The Shadow Monarch killed them all. Q. He dared to do that to my master. After that, Rakan's sword trembled in Suho's hand. I'm angry. If only my strength had been in perfect form, I would have torn all of you to pieces and thrown away as food for the wolves. No, if I had known that you were the offspring of the Shadow Monarch, I should have been vigilant from the start. What do you mean? Suho looked at the sword. You mean you're not in your best shape now? Of course, I am the strongest weapon created by Rakan, the king of beasts, with his own fangs. Your attack power is only 30, to say it's the strongest, though? Beru laughed. That's why I said it's not perfect. My mission was to protect this sanctuary. Now, in this sanctuary, I was able to exert almost equal strength as Rakan. But, in the end, I couldn't protect it. A deity that loses its sanctuary loses its power. The ghost muttered in a somber tone. That is an expected result, Beru said. The world that has lost its master, the monarch, is torn to pieces and wanders through dimensional rifts, remnants of war. That was the dungeon. As the apostles of outer gods cracked the dimensional wall to invade Earth, it became connected to the dungeons. Beru's eyes shimmered. Those defeated soldiers who held a grudge against this world were the ones who were killed by the Shadow Monarch. Of course, it was those guys who attacked first. After all, this is the remains of a defeated world, and there is nothing we can do about it. Don't worry, young master. Please leave it to me. Beru looked at the sword greedily. Even a dried squid squeezes water out. I will try to tear it apart somehow. Even if you try to threaten me, you won't get anything. Rakan's sword responded firmly. 10 minutes later, Rakan's sword spilled everything he knew. A few days later, young master, what's bothering you? Beru asked Suho. Is it because you rejected their offer? After coming out of the dungeon at Korea University, many things happened to Suho. He met the Hunters Association after they received reports from miners. When the hunters entered the dungeon, there were only monster corpses that died at the hands of Suho. Because of this, Suho received recruitment calls from various guilds. All of those were offers to sign contracts as collectors or porters. No, it's not like that. Suho had no intention of accepting any offer. Unlike other hunters, Suho improves through the level-up system. If he was an ordinary E-class hunter, he would have accepted an offer from a large guild, even if it was a porter contract. But it was an offer that Suho could not feel the slightest attraction to. I was thinking of the things Rakan's sword told me. Rakan's sword, said that the sanctuary he guarded was torn into several pieces and scattered through the dimensional rift. As a result, his power has greatly weakened. Even when he took Kim Youngjin's body and he was able to command all the wolves around him, even that ability disappeared the moment he came out of the sanctuary. It still wasn't very successful. In the dimensional rifts, there were more sanctuaries like this dungeon, and in them, relics like Rakan's sword were kept. The ghost in the Rakan's sword, who gave in to Beru's persuasion, eventually blew one of the sanctuary's locations. The problem was that they had to enter the dungeon as quickly as possible. Rakan's sword said that it was impossible to guarantee that the artifacts would still be preserved intact. Even at this very moment, it must be wandering aimlessly through the dimensional rift, gradually weakening. But, of all places, it's because it was a dungeon occupied by another guild. That's right, and that, of course, is the infamous Hyena Guild. The Hyena Guild was famous as a guild formed by former gangsters. In the era of hunters, awakeners emerged among gangsters. The guild they created was notorious for not hiding its nature and choosing only dirty activities. It could be dangerous if you get into trouble with other hunters because you're weak. Beru agonized. On that, the Beast Monarch's power scattered over Earth wasn't such a good thing. It was clear that most humans would fall prey as soon as the practice of the law of the jungle, which is common in the world of the Beast Monarch, was applied to Earth. However, that did not mean that Suho, who was still at a low level, should take a risk. Young master, you need to level up and build up your strength first. What are you doing? Suho was packing his luggage. Preparing to enter the dungeon. What about the Hyena Guild? I can just sneak in. Chapter 15. Chapter 14. The field-type dungeon was a contaminated area that was created when the dungeon break was not completely blocked. This mainly happened because of the uniqueness of the terrain rather than the strength of the monsters that appeared. China and Russia were the pioneers of this. Because the land is so wide, it is difficult for the hunters to search for the monsters individually when the gate is open, so they end up being neglected. In addition, it was difficult to find the location of the gate where the disintegration started, so it took several times longer to attack. For a similar reason, Korea has a lot of rugged mountains instead of a narrow land, so field-type dungeons tend to appear quite often. Gwanaksen Field. Only Hyena Guild allowed. The entrance to Gwanaksen Mountain is thoroughly blocked from entering and leaving the area with barbed wire. Gwanaksen Field was a field-type dungeon occupied by the Hyena Guild for a year already. Suho was watching Gwanak Mountain from afar, covering his face with a hood and mask. This is the right place. Beru licked his lips as he was standing on top of Suho's shoulder. He could feel the energy of the sanctuary that Rakan's sword told them about. However, even Rakan's sword didn't know what was inside the sanctuary. We're already here, yet you still don't know? No matter how many times you ask, my answer is the same. I'm just a sword that was stuck on the floor. It is possible to detect the energy of the sanctuary, but what's in it is not known exactly. The Rakan's sword said, feeling wronged. In response, Beru chewed on the mana stone and gave it a threatening look. I hope that's not a lie. Otherwise, I'll chew you down from the tip to the handle. Very, very slowly. Can you stop threatening me? You're scaring me. Rakan's sword was straightforward. There was no pretense, perhaps because it was a sword. The sun was setting just in time. Suho, who had been waiting for this moment, glanced up at the sky and his eyes lit up. Great. Now, let's go inside. Suho pulled his hood and slowly walked towards the barbed wire. Maybe it was because his senses stat went up. His vision was clear to some extent, even in the dark. At this level, it seemed that there would be no major obstacle to fighting. Rather, it was better because it was dark. The priority is not to be caught by the Hyena Guild. It was illegal for an unauthorized hunter to enter a dungeon occupied by another guild. However, he was not going to make money from someone else's business. He was only going to quietly go in and get the relics of the Beast Monarch, so there was no problem as long as he didn't get caught. If the Beast Monarch's artifact fell into the hands of an ordinary awakener, that hunter could have been taken away and turned into a berserker, just like Rakan's sword. Is that CCTV and barbed wire? Suho's gaze looked around calmly. People couldn't guard every corner of the vast field-type dungeons. The only thing guarding this place was barbed wire and CCTV cameras standing in the middle. Ruler's power. Swoosh. Suho slowly lifted the black plastic bag he had brought into the air. Then it moved naturally as if blown by the wind, covering the entire camera. Now. Thud. Suho jumped over the barbed wire in one leap. It was the moment when the strength stats he had put up so far mattered most. Thunk. Landing lightly inside the field, Suho immediately searched the surroundings. There was a thick blue mist hovering all over Gwanoksan Mountain. It was this mist, not the barbed wire, that separated the fields. This blue mist is the magic of outer space. It is used to forcibly penetrate the dimensional wall and cause cracks in the world. Right. Because of this mist, the sanctuary I was in also wandered through the dimensional rift and connected to Earth. After all, what the outer creatures want is to spread the mist all over Earth and cause a great rift. They're trying to drill a hole big enough for their army to cross the dimension. Shh! Suho held his breath for a moment and squinted his eyes. There's something. Less than a minute after he set foot on the field, there were already more and more red eyes staring at him. Razor-clawed. Monster monkeys appeared one by one under the cold moonlight. Now, even Suho knows. The level-up system showed different colors of names above the head according to the strength of the beast. White is relatively weak. Orange is equal or stronger. Red is much stronger, and those monkeys were orange. We are surrounded by weak monkeys. Still, young master is weaker, so please be careful. Your support is so annoying. Suho smiled faintly at Beru's support and grabbed Rakan's sword. Considering the difficulty and number of them, it's a bit risky. This is enough. Rather, it's good. If he only caught easy ones, he would get less experience. Suho blinked and moved. Now it's time to level up. Monkeys started to fall from the trees. Their blade-like long claws flew into Suho's body, trying to tear it apart. In response, Rakan's sword in Suho's hand cut through the cold night air. Slash! You have killed a razor-clawed brigga. You have killed a razor-clawed brigga. Like that, Suho continued to move forward, trampling on the corpses of the monsters that attacked endlessly. He had no intention of wandering aimlessly this late at night. Guide the way. Which way is the gate? Amazing. Are you familiar with this kind of mess? Rakan's sword was genuinely surprised. The situation was the worst. If you kill one, two will come running. Kill 2 and 5 will fall from above your head. Those mean monkeys climbed the trees and the darkness confused Suho. Slash! There were even ones throwing rocks from the trees and giggling. Kyak! 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 However, Suho showed no signs of panic at all as he ran back and forth in that hectic mess. Even considering that he is the Shadow Monarch's offspring, isn't he too skilled in combat compared to the power he possesses? What mess have you been through so far? Give me directions. Suho smiled wryly at those words. What was too special about it, he thought. It was all because of a dream he had when he was a teenager. To wake up from the dream, those terrible experiences where he somehow had to survive and reach the final boss were deeply engraved in his body. If he died in the middle, he had to start all over again. The tutorial was too hard. No matter how bad this situation was, it was heaven compared to that time. It was just that Beru, who kept shrugging his shoulders with a proud expression on his side, hated to look at him. The tip of Rakan's sword in Suho's hand moved by itself and pointed in one direction. For now, this way. But the path to Sanctuary will be hell. It looks like you're quite familiar with this kind of mess. Even so, it would be hard for you to get there by yourself. Who said I am alone? What? Suho smiled and looked around. Just in time, black smoke started creeping up from the corpses of the monkeys who had died miserably on the floor. Shadow extraction is possible. Shadow extraction is possible. Suho stretched out his hand toward the shadows. Arise! Kick, kick. The giggles echoed through the cool night air. Along with them, pitch-black hands began to stretch out from the shadows of the dead monkeys on the floor. Kwareok, kwareok! The hands were on the ground, crawling out of the shadows and rising themselves. Shadow extraction successful. Wukik. There were 5 in total. Black monkeys oozing black steam appeared in front of Suho. Basic class. Basic class. Seeing that, Beru gave a round of applause. Oh, there's 5. As much as the intellect stat has risen, the number of shadow soldiers has also increased. But compared to the tens of millions of legions of the Shadow Monarch, you're too noisy. Ho caught Beru and threw it to the beasts. Kah! This much isn't overwhelming. Beru spread his sharp claws as he flew. He tore all the monsters in one move. Thud. Jump. Kikiki. The monkeys who kicked Beru down attacked Suho again. However, in the gap, the shadow monkeys approached from behind and thrust bladed claws into their necks. You have killed a razor-clawed Brigga. You have killed a razor-clawed Brigga. Your level increased. Suho's body was filled with vitality. Shadow monkeys trampled on the other monkey corpses and giggled meanly. Now that I think they're on our side, I think they're a bit cute. Let's keep going. It was like breaking up before getting to know each other. The steeper the mountain slope, the stronger the monsters blocked the front. Shashak! A stealthy assassin hiding in the dark. Red-eyed beasts resembling black panthers mercilessly bit the shadow monkeys' necks. The shadow monkeys died helplessly. The difference in power was very prominent. Phew. However, Suho felt more exhilarated. They are mine too. Swish! At that moment, something emerged from Rakan's sword. Skill, contempt for the weak, has been used. Black Shadow Razan's body instantly became heavy. Effect, fear, is activated. All stats of the targets are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. However, Rakan's sword, contempt for the weak, was a skill that only worked well against weaker opponents than Suho. Kyo is cancelled. Black Shadow, Razan's name, is in color orange. Since they were equal to or slightly stronger than Suho, the fear effect was removed just by a strong roar. But that brief break was enough. In an instant, Suho's appearance disappeared from their sight. Then, slash, kag! A black panther was decapitated, spurting black blood. You have defeated Black Shadow Razan. Swoosh! The others then quickly hid in the darkness, but this one was enough. Suho stretched out his hand towards the corpse. Arise. Shadow extraction successful. One of the shadow monkeys disappeared, and the shadow of Razan, the black shadow, rose instead. KO! Shadow Leopard Lo 1. Basic class. Suho smiled contentedly. Great, it's a new family member. The guy who had been trying to bite Suho's neck just a moment ago rubbed his body against Suho's leg with his tail drooping as if he had always done that. Then he turned its head and bared its teeth at its kind, who glared Suho's way in the darkness of the forest. Are you lonely? Go and bring your friends too, Suho said. At that, the shadow leopard immediately ran out to hunt its kind. Suho moved forward while upgrading the shadow soldiers one by one to stronger ones. This is why we lost the war. Damn, guys. Rakan's shadow murmured dejectedly. After a while, everyone stop! At Suho's command, the shadow leopards held their breath and fell flat on the spot. That's right, the one in front. Rakan's sword didn't even need to say it. The Hyena Guild members' outposts were built there. Chapter 16. Chapter 15. There was an outpost to guard the gate. They must have gone into the dungeon and collected mana stones. I guess. Lots of mining carts were left outside the gate. Seeing that the cart was full of mana stones, it seemed that the miners had just left work. That large amount of mana stones would not have been left unattended, but it was also possible because it was a field-type dungeon. There shouldn't be a thief who would climb the mountain where monsters roam at night just to steal some mana stones. Just then, the thief was here. Beru jumped to the cart and started picking up the mana stone. At first, he expressed disapproval, but now he seems to enjoy eating those. This is said to be quite chewy. Beru chewed on the mana stone and looked around. After confirming that there was no presence anywhere, he called Suho. It seems that everyone has left work. I can't see a single ant. Count the numbers correctly. You are the ant here. Young master, isn't the handle of the sword a bit long? How can I bite from the tip? Come on. If you eat me, you'll have a hard time entering the sanctuary and finding artifacts. That's right, so stop drooling, Beru. Chomp. All right. Beru responded quickly and threw the pieces of mana stones into his mouth. In fact, eating Rakan's sword would have been much more energizing than eating a truckload of mana stones like this. However, after a long time, Suho finally has a weapon that he can use, so Beru can't ask for it. He has no choice but to eat those mana stones. Chomp, 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 chomp. The Rakan's sword trembled in fear. Even as Beru chewed on the mana stone, he was watching the sword with eyes dripping with regret. Suho's hand holding the sword wasn't strong enough. Now, go into the gate. There will be a sanctuary beyond. Wait a second. Suho suddenly turned and hid behind the outpost. He squinted his eyes and focused on the gate. There is someone. Just in time, he saw someone walking out of the gate, but it wasn't just one or two. Haven't the miners left yet? There's no way. If they stayed there until this dark, the way out of the field-type dungeon would be too dangerous. Besides, mining wasn't something that would take a day, so there was no reason to work so late. On top of that, they are raiders. It made things even more strange. With all the monsters outside the gate, what could they have done inside the gate? At that time, Beru jumped up on Suho's shoulder and whispered in a small voice. "Young master, something is strange. They smell like beasts." Beast. It was then. Grrr. The faces of the hunters who came out of the gate were revealed in the moonlight. They looked like werewolves, messy hair covering the face, pointy teeth. The identities of the hunters were werewolves in human clothes. Is it a beast transformation skill? The first thing Suho thought of was skill. There were various types of skills, and sometimes there were hunters who could transform into non-humans like that. However, it was extremely rare for hunters with the same skills to gather in one place. I wonder if it's the White Tiger Guild. However, no matter how many beast hunters there are, even the White Tiger Guild couldn't have gathered such a number of beasts of the same type. It seems like they drank the blood of our clan. Blood? Suho looked at Rakan's sword. The blood of the canine clan contains great power. Even if lowly humans drink a few drops of the clan's blood, they gain powerful power that surpasses the species. Like how if someone touches you, their body gets taken away? No, rather the opposite. It's not like those guys were taken away. It's because the clan's power was taken away. They stole it? Yeah. I don't know which idiot from the alternate clan fed them blood, but the lack of blood must have diminished their strength. Suho made a strange expression. You can get the beast transformation skill by drinking blood. Other than runestones, I had never heard of a skill being obtained in such a strange way. However, since it's only been 2 years since the cataclysm, new situations are bound to arise at any time. But I don't understand. Rakan's sword muttered in a voice that sounded somewhat displeased. Who the hell made such crossbreeds of dogs by allowing their power to get consumed? What is going on? That's when Rakan's sword expressed his doubts. A really strange thing happened. The werewolves went into the warehouse they had built near the gate and dragged out the people tied up with duct tape. What? Suho's eyes widened. People who had their mouths sealed with duct tape were trembling in fear. The corners of the werewolves' mouths formed a smirk. Grrr. Were you bored waiting all day long? It will be your final moment, so we'll let you breathe. In return, can you be quiet? We hate noise. Swish. Duct tape was ripped out of the people's mouths. As if they had been waiting for it, desperate cries could be heard all over. Save us. Please, please send us back home. Oh, so noisy. Do you want to be eaten now? Thup. The tape was put back on their mouths. Hup. They were so afraid that they wouldn't even want to breathe, just not to make any noise. Great. How nice is it to be quiet? We hate noise because our senses are sensitive. So, everyone, if you do that one more time, we might just go ahead and bite your necks. Grrr. Those words didn't sound like a joke. The people's complexions turned white. One of the werewolves spoke. All right, it looks like you have a lot to say after being held captive for a few days, so I'll listen to your last will. Can you speak softly instead? A middle-aged office worker in the middle hurriedly opened his mouth. Hey, over there, if you need money, I can somehow. Tsk. No, just listen to me for a second. You shouldn't just do this. You have to tell us what you want so we can... At that, the werewolf stared at the subordinate with an expression like he could die of annoyance. Hey, just kill him. Should I? Let's take at least one guy for ourselves. Grrr. Looking at the werewolf approaching him, the office worker shouted in panic. No, wait, it's a crime to do this. Oh, really? Annoyance appeared on the face of the werewolf, who grabbed the office worker by the nape of his neck with one hand. I hate noise. Then, he pulled the dagger from his waistband and was about to lunge it into the office worker's neck. Slash! However, something was strange. Thud! It was the werewolf who had his head cut off. An axe suddenly flew from somewhere and separated the werewolf's neck from his body. Hey! The office worker who narrowly escaped death saw the werewolf's head falling in front of him and wet his pants. The werewolves, startled by the sudden situation, raised their guards and pulled out their weapons. Who are you? Who dares? It was then. Stealthy assassins approached from hiding in the dark, slashing the wolves' legs with sharp claws. Ack! Shadow Leopard Wom, Basic Class, Ra Razan. The eyes of the werewolves widened wide after confirming the identity of their enemies. Black Shadow Razan was one of the most dangerous beasts in this forest. However, due to their dislike of bright light, they did not even go near the gate full of torches. Why is Razan here? No, something's a little different from the normal Razan. Grrr! The shadow leopards lunged at them like crazy. What the fuck? Let's kill them first. Don't panic, there are only 5. Slash! Although they were taken aback by the sudden attack, they were veteran hunters who had been here for a year. It wasn't easy enough to give up their lives to only 5 monsters. But there was something they didn't know. The fact that the owner of those 5 beasts from behind is now wishing for their death. Thud. He suddenly remembered the first werewolf's head that was cut and the axe falling on the floor. Then, slash! Cut! Ack! Another werewolf's head got separated from its body. This is crazy. What's with those axes? The stone axe that had beheaded 2 of their comrades flew like a boomerang and was aiming for their necks too. Skill. That's definitely a skill. Where is he? Don't be a coward and come out. The owner of the axe had no intention of continuing to hide as well, for whatever circumstance. The eyes of Suho, with his face covered with a hood and black mask, reflected the cool moonlight. Save the victims first, then think afterwards. You are truly a hunter. Swoosh! A tremendous force emerged from Rakan's sword. Skill, contempt for the weak, has been used. At that moment, the werewolves' bodies temporarily stiffened. Effect, fear, has been activated. All stats of the targets are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. Grrr! Then, with a roar, some of the werewolves let go of their fears. Effect, fear, is cancelled. But that was enough to buy some time. Swing! The shadow leopard cut the wolf's Achilles tendon. Slash! Through the ruler's power, the axe was stuck on its chest. And, well, they're such low-breed dogs, Suho's sword slashed their throats. Grrr! The other surviving werewolves looked at Suho. There was only one guy. Die! Grrr! They turned their focus on him. Ring! An urgent quest has arrived. The quest window opened in front of Suho's eyes. Urgent quest. Defeat the enemies. There are people around who have the intent to kill the player. Kill them all to be safe. Number of enemies to kill, 10. Number of enemies killed, 5. The quest had already started, with half the target already cleared out. It's a good thing. Even in the midst of this, Beru, who was eagerly chewing on the mana stone in the corner, was letting out a pleasant laugh. Ah! I can't stop my mouth. Why is the mana stone here so high in power? Is it because it's from a sanctuary? Unfortunately, no one answered that question. Everyone was busy, but that was then. Beru then turned his gaze towards the gate. This smell. Someone with a smell similar to the beast monarch was walking out of the gate. Chapter 17. Chapter 16. It was about a year ago that the name of the Hyena Guild became widely known. It is said that they were originally backstreet bullies who were active in the Gwacheon area. But after awakening, stories said that they were originally from a popular group of gangsters, exaggerating their past history. Indeed, it was a shallow bluff, but after they became awakened, they committed a lot of real gangster-like activities, such as making debts against low-level hunters for usury. As a condition for foregoing the interest, they throw them into a dungeon and have them pickaxe without pay. It would have been unimaginable now, but at that time, there was no hunter association. There were no hunter-related laws to prevent their evil deeds. While researching about them, Suho found out a strange fact. All of them, who were only bullies in the neighborhood, awakened almost at the same time. Even the place where it happened, at Gwanaksan. Does that make sense? Suho felt puzzled. A year ago, a dungeon break broke out in Gwanaksan. The porters who came to bury the bodies in Gwanaksan, ordered by the gangsters accidentally, all awakened. And right away, they created a group called the Hyena Guild. They took control of the Gwanaksan field and were making money by mining mana stones. Until now, a year later. It's just too coincidental. Opinions were still divided as to the reason for those ordinary people to awaken their magical powers. There were talks about heredity. Some are saying that it was pure luck, like winning the lottery or the chance of being struck by lightning. These guesses could have been all bullshit, or they could have been all right. For some, it's heredity. For others, it's luck. In the end, it was said that if the awakening came in any way, this ability would be obtained. After all, nothing quite makes sense anymore. It seemed that the Hyena Guild members awakened because they drank the blood of the canine clan. If so, it would be understandable that they awakened at the same time. The problem is that there is a separate canine clan that is said to have given that blood. Suho doesn't know if it's good luck or bad luck, but he thought he would soon find out who the canine clan really was. Because right now, a tremendous sense of intimidation was emerging out of the gate. Chills, the breath of a terrifying beast. The vicious life inside it shook the air of Gwanaksan covered with blue mist. At that blatant and obvious presence, Suho turned to the gate as he was fighting the werewolves. "Young master, it is dangerous." Beru climbed onto Suho's shoulder and hurriedly whispered. Beru's expression changed. "We need to get away from here as soon as possible. With an opponent like this, young master can't handle it yet." It wasn't that easy. Skill, Extreme Command, increases the abilities of werewolves by 50%. As a side effect of Skill Extreme Command, werewolves are cursed with madness. Cow! Suddenly, the werewolves that Suho was dealing with grew in size, and their movements became incredibly fast and powerful. Their madness started to put more pressure on Suho. "Roar! Do you think I'll let you run away?" "Die! Grrr! Ah! Kill that bastard! Slash! Thud! Ack!" Suho's body began to accumulate wounds at a rapid rate due to the unprecedented situation. Skill, endurance level increased, 40%. It's good that the skill level has risen, but that doesn't mean the battle has become easier. I knew this would happen, so I warned you from the beginning. The closer you get to the sanctuary, the more dangerous it is. Rakan's sword was displeased. This energy, apparently not only artifacts lived here, but also filthy hybrids. Hybrid? Suho, who managed to take down a werewolf, asked back. Yes, the great canine clan had numerous tribes following it. There was one of them that gave off this dirty aura. It was then, swoosh, grrr, the roar of a bloody beast Shuha, Kagwanaksan. Right, that's him. Brokey, the head of the hyena clan. Just then, a huge monster appeared outside the gate. Messy mane, mottled pattern, pointy teeth, a hyena the size of a house appeared. A red name tag appeared above his head. That color meant one thing. That hyena is a monster with power that Suho could not dare to handle. The boss of the dungeon was alive. Suho shuddered at the pressure he felt from him. Apparently, the Hyena Guild had been intentionally hiding information about this place for a year. A field-type dungeon with boss mobs is a disaster in itself. If the other hunters knew this fact, they wouldn't have left this place alone until now. Is this the reason why the guild's name was Hyena? It was really odd. The hunters who had to hunt the monsters would rather be the servants of the monsters, catching humans and offering them as food? Clench. Suho, who grasped the situation, gritted his teeth. Seeing that, the giant hyena opened its mouth and yawned. He then recognized Rakan's sword in Suho's hand and giggled. I had been feeling this familiar energy. Was it Rakan's sword? Brokey. What's it like? How come that the great beast monarch's remains is being held captive by a mere human? Rakan's sword felt humiliated. Even at this moment, he is caught in Suho's hand and is swinging around like crazy. Of all the ones, why did it have to be Brokey? It wasn't easy for you to become like that. Have you lost all your original strength? Isn't it just the same for both you and me as defeated soldiers who lost their monarch? It looks like the two of them aren't close. Even at this moment, Suho was still fighting fiercely against the werewolves. The problem is that even after killing all the wolves, that hyena still remains. No matter how much the defeated soldiers who lost their monarch lost their original strength and became weak, Suho was still much weaker than them, to die quietly. Even in this bleak situation, Suho kept his fierce eyes. Slash! Number of enemies to be defeated, 10. Number of enemies killed, 9. Only one werewolf left, but Brokey didn't even bat an eye at the sight of his minions dying. Sk! Weak guys. Can't even stand a single human. Rather, he laughed at their deaths and spoke to the sword in Suho's hand. All right, Rakan's sword, join me to kill that human. Just in case you need a useful one, I'll be your new master. Bullshit. A mongrel like you dares to become my master? My master is only Rakan Nim. Isn't Rakan already dead? What? How dare you? Haha. Don't be angry. If you're weak, you die. The one who survives is the strongest. Just like me. Rakan's sword erupted in anger at Brokey's mocking laugh. It shouted at Suho. Human, kill him right now. Insert my blade into the throat of that bastard who insulted Rakan. Kyaha! You sound funny. Try whatever you want. Such a weak... Before he could finish his words, Rakan's sword lunged from Suho's hand. Slash! The cold blade of the sword lodged in Brokey's throat, who was laughing. In an instant, an airy voice escaped from Brokey's mouth. Suho appeared in his widened field of vision. The man stood in a calm posture looking at the beast. With his other hand, he grabbed the remaining one by the neck. Are you okay? Brokey's eyes curved like crescent moons. You're interesting. Even with Rakan's sword stuck in his neck, he had a relaxed expression. But you can't kill me with just this kind of attack. I know, but I can still make it painful. Suho clenched his hand, ruler's power. Swoosh. Twist. At that moment, Rakan's sword stuck in Brokey's neck started spinning like a drill on the spot, fiercely. Krr-krr. The pain Brokey felt in his neck startled him as he struggled. Faster. More fiercely. Krr-krr. More. Deeper. Skill Bladestorm has been used. Grumble. This is Rakan's sword, whirled around like a storm and burrowed into Brokey's body. The more he did, the more Brokey struggled in pain. I'm enjoying this, bastard. Suho could hear the delight in Rakan's sword's voice. Is it really okay to do this? It was still absolutely impossible to kill Brokey at the current level of Suho. No matter how much Brokey became weaker than before, his regenerative power far exceeded Suho's attack power. But it was refreshing. Isn't Rakan already dead? How dare he, a servant who insults the death of his master, the great beast monarch. It was a sin that would not be forgiven even if he was to be beheaded right away. But the reality is that he had to be content with just giving him that much pain. Eventually, ah, you bastard! I'm gonna kill! Suho received all of Brokey's wrath. Grumble. Brokey, who had become a wounded beast, stomped his feet, spewing ferocious flesh. His strength is so great that Guanaksan shook. Cow! A huge pressure like a rock hit Suho. It was then, I'm sorry, but thank you for protecting the last pride of a defeated soldier. The determined voice of Rakan's sword echoed. Rattle! Brokey's body, which was about to trample on Suho, temporarily stopped. Rakan's sword, you bastard! Rakan's sword, which forcibly controlled his movements inside his body, urgently shouted to Suho. Run away! I'll try to buy some time. However, Suho didn't seem to have any intention of backing down. Slash! Just then, the last werewolf died in Suho's hand. Number of enemies killed 10. Then the messages followed. Ring. You have completed urgent quest, defeat the enemies. Ring. Your level increased. Ring. The following rewards are prepared. Reward 1, ability points +5. Reward 2, title, Wolf Slayer. Accept the reward. Ring. Title, Wolf Slayer has been acquired. Thuck. Suho picks up a weapon used by werewolves from the floor. With 2 swords in each hand, Suho's eyes flashed like a hunter's. At that moment. A title given to hunters who are good at catching wolves. All stats increase by 40% when facing beast-type monsters. The hunt begins. Suho's whole body was engulfed in intense contemplation. Chapter 18. Chapter 17. The title Wolf Slayer buff effect is activated. Thud. Suho's feet hit the ground. Swoosh, his new image emerged. Brokey's face was then stained with astonishment. What? Something unbelievable happened. Suho's strength and speed, along with momentum, bursted out of his whole body. All of that changed in an instant. His new stats were due to leveling up by +1. Extra stat +5 from the quest reward. Furthermore, a title that boosts all stats by a whopping plus 40% against beast-type monsters. All of that synergy was concentrated on the Sword of Protection. Twin Swords. Blade Storm. A Blade Storm has been used. Grumble. Suho really became a storm. The two swords crossed and a strong wind blew. Twin Swords of 1 has been obtained. It was truly ruthless violence, a one-sided slaughter. Slash! Bastard! Brokey tried to counterattack, but that too was nothing more than a desperate struggle. Crash! With that, the guard posts built by the Hyena Guild collapsed and were smashed. How dare he! Even before Brokey finished his words, a red light formed in a straight line from its wide-open mouth. Rakan's sword was picked up by the ruler's power. Suho's hand grabbed the sword. And just like that, slash! He took the beast down. You have defeated the Extreme Commander Brokey. Blag! Finally, the huge beast collapsed. Your level increased. Your level increased. Phew! Suho was on the floor. You've done it. You killed it, young master. Beru shouted as if he had been waiting for this moment. Wow. Did it actually work? A human defeating Brokey? Beru laughed at that and replied, Didn't you know? The world is, after all, a weakling. The strong are devoured by the stronger. Young master will become stronger in the future as well. Oh, and young master, can I have some of this? Beru licked his lips and pointed at Brokey's corpse. Suho looked at it. Shadow release is possible on this target. Black smoke billowed above it. Confusion appeared in Suho's eyes. Shadow release is also possible on this beast? Then, it's too bad I can't give it all to Beru now. Just one bite. Eat the rest after shadow release. All right, whoop. As soon as permission was given, Beru jumped happily. Brokey's corpse was a good source of mana. Heh, it's just one bite. Beru's mouth opened wickedly. If it's just one bite, which part would I have to eat to get the word that I ate it well? It was right there. Brain. The weak meat. I really like it too. Beru muttered and dug into Brokey's head. Suho released all the people who were tied up. I reported it to the Hunter Association, so a rescue team will come soon. Beasts are still roaming the mountain, so don't go anywhere else and stay here for a while. Hook, thank you, thank you. They were covered in tears and snot while wailing loudly because of how long they had been tied up. Young master, these are all debtors to the Hyena Guild. They couldn't pay their debt, so they signed a waiver and were arrested. Beru, how do you know that? My skill is predation. I ate Brokey's brain and stole some of his memories. You do all sorts of things. I am a very useful species in many ways. Beru was so proud he stood up with both hands on his waist. Oh, by the way, when I looked at Brokey's abilities, there was no such thing as the power to create werewolves by feeding them blood. What? So how did those guys? Suho's gaze turned to the werewolves lying dead on the floor. It was the strangest thing for me from the beginning, too, Rakan's sword said. The Hyena clan is just one of many tribes that followed the Canine clan. Feeding blood to create minions is something only the Canine clan can do. Then, somehow, it seems that there is a real one besides Brokey. Suho and Beru's eyes simultaneously looked at the gate where Brokey came out. There's a real boss mob. Suho fixed his sword with determined eyes. Then Beru, from the side, shrugged and said, It wouldn't be a boss mob. Really? Suho gives him a puzzled expression. Yes, if Brokey's memory is correct, it seems that the battle will no longer take place. Beru's expression was a bit bitter. You'll find out when you get inside. Suho entered the gate. He found a small and fragile creature. His expression stiffened. There was a blood-stained wolf cub lying helplessly. Scruffy gray hair, roughly wrapped bandages. It was a very small wolf, only about a hand in size. Syringes from which blood was drawn were rolling around randomly. Seeing this, Rakan's sword trembled with fury. Brokey, how dare you! Crazy bastard! Could it be that the descendant of the clan was tied up and blood was drawn forcibly? Flinch. Did you hear his anger? The wolf cub tied to the dog collar lifted its head helplessly. The unfocused eyes stared blankly at the empty space where Suho was standing. Then it sniffed with its little nose. A human stranger. There was a smell of blood on his clothes. A weak cry. After that, the wolf cub lowered his head again. There was not even a speck of will to live or hope left in the small body that had lost its strength. Brokey, you crazy hybrid! Extremely angry, Rakan's sword cursed Brokey, who was already dead and gone. Beru muttered calmly as he read Broki's memories. Shortly after losing the war against the Shadow Army, Broki left the battlefield before anyone else. In fact, he was more like a deserter than a defeated soldier. Broki's next move was really low. He hid in the sanctuary of the Canine clan, which was considered the safest place, and found the clan's young wolf there. A wolf cub living there alone after all the adults went to war. That little one in the memory waggled his tail in delight when Broki entered the sanctuary. But seeing that, Broki came up with an idea. Yes, this is it. With the blood of this canine clan, I can create any number of protectors. I'll make them protect me. My own army. I'm creating a new tribe here that only serves me. You like it too, right? Ha ha ha. Broki smiled at the wolf cub wagging its tail at him. After that, the sanctuary was torn into several pieces and wandered through the dimensional rift. One day, a hole connected to the earth appeared in front of Broki. He found a group of humans. Without hesitation, Broki drew the blood of this young wolf and fed it to those people. The next thing was something Suho knew very well. The protectors that were created became Broki's army under the name of the Hyena Guild. They hunted humans and sacrificed them to Broki for 1 whole year. However, there was one problem. That was the reason Rakan's sword was furious. The power of the protectors is not eternal, 10 days at most. After that period, the power of blood engraved on the body of the protectors disappears and returns to its original state. That means, once every 10 days, blood was drawn from this guy and fed to the guild members for an entire year. Ah, Broki! Broki! Suho picked up the limping wolf cub with one hand. He was a little surprised at how light it was. You're gonna take it? Beru's eyes widened. This young wolf was a direct descendant, if not the direct descendant, of the canine monarch. If you keep him alive, he may grow up to be the second Fang monarch and threaten Earth again. You said we won anyway back then? That's right, Beru looked intently at the wolf cub in Suo's hand. Seeing how much blood had been drawn, he couldn't even breathe properly. Beru nodded. Haha, there is no need for us to antagonize each other in a situation where the monsters are attacking. Even though they were defeated in the war, the children who survived were innocent. It was rather amazing how it survived so far with its small and light body. However, Suho did not intend to take the wolf with such a dramatic reason. I think it will help me in some way later on. Also, if you die here and now, your last memory will be very unhappy, right? You were caught by the man you trusted, and you had your blood sucked for a whole year. Saying so, Suho took him into his arms. So let's just eat some food first, and think about it after. Suho immediately returned home with the wolf cub. As for the Hyena Guild in Guanaxon Field, he reported it to the association and just put it behind. Civilian survivors will give much more specific testimonies than Suho anyway. More than that, the cub seemed like it would die right now. Beru, you said you're a healer. Can you heal something like this? Healer's recovery magic can only heal wounds. I can't do anything about lack of blood or hunger. Even recovery skills are not flexible. All right then. Suho turned on the electric stove and put it in front of the wolf cub. Why? Is it good because it's warm? The wolf cub looked quite perplexed. Its tail was curled up and it was trembling, but its gaze was staring at the red light of the electric stove as if possessed. Well, you may be seeing fire for the first time in your life. Suho left it alone and immediately cooked seaweed soup. He let it cool and served it on a small plate. I know you are really enjoying yourself today. This is a recipe my mom used to make for me on my birthday. Suho showed condescension and held out seaweed soup in front of its short snout. Eat it. They say that seaweed soup is good when you don't have enough blood. Sniff, sniff. The wolf cub's tail twitched when it smelled the seaweed soup. It's all right. Try it. When Suho forcibly smeared seaweed soup on its snout, its tongue flicked instinctively. Huh? Oh, I didn't know. Even wolves have astonished looks like humans. The wolf cub puts its nose into the plate and licks the seaweed soup. Its hairless tail waggled helplessly. Rakan's sword, watching silently, muttered in low voice. Thanks. For everything. He had mixed feelings. The reason they became like this in the first place was because they lost the war against the humans. But even though the war was over, the children who survived were innocent. They had to survive in the present and stand up to live in the future. And maybe this young wolf was the only survivor of the canine clan. As Beru warned, he was a petty monarch who would one day grow up to inherit the lineage of the Fang monarch. To think that the heir of the Shadow monarch would lend helping hand such a child. What kind of irony is this? Do you like it? Suho smiles as he crouches down in front of the little wolf cub, licking the warm soup. Rakan's sword, who's watching them, had no choice but to accept the fact that the war was over. Okay, you won. I will entrust all of our recruits to you. He sighed softly. The will of the greatest beast, the Fang monarch Rakan, dwelled in Suho ring. Pet Fang Wolf Lifort 1 has been obtained. Chapter 19, Chapter 18, A Pet? Suho made a puzzled expression when he saw the message that suddenly appeared. Pet. Beru asked the same. Chump, chump, chump. Before I knew it, a name tag appeared on the head of the wolf cub who was licking seaweed soup. Fang Wolf. The system sent a message. Ring. You can give your pet a name. Please name your pet. Name my pet. When Suho looked at Beru, who had a troubled expression. There was nothing like this in the past. Which one? A pet? Yes. When His Majesty was leveling up, there was no such function. Beru explained. The level-up system currently applied to Suho was originally inherited from the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, which he used in the past. Of course, it was improved to some extent from then, but that was to remove the malevolence that dwelled in the system. Malevolence? Yes. The purpose of the system at the time was to forcibly develop a human named Sung Jinwoo to use as a vessel for the Shadow Monarch. As soon as the goal was accomplished, the soul of named Sung Jinwoo was bound to disappear. Anyway, Sung Jinwoo ended up defying the purpose of the system and became the Shadow Monarch himself. He became a great being who no longer needed to level up. The person who inherited the system was Suho. But why is there a pet system now that didn't exist back then? Maybe it wasn't just now, it might have been there from the beginning. Beru squinted and stroked his chin. Besides, the designers of the level-up system were not us, but the shaman of the fantasy realm who dreamed of immortality. Shaman? Yes, he's the only one who knows exactly what functions are in the system. A long time ago, the shaman of the fantasy realm wished to escape from the fate of a finite creature and become an eternal existence. As a result, the level-up system was created after making an agreement with the angels of God. However, the purpose of the system at the time was only to complete the Shadow Monarch's vessel, so there was no need for a pet. Killing everyone and turning them into shadow soldiers was enough. But the purpose of Young Master's system now is completely different from that time. Suho made a puzzled expression. The purpose of the system was not to make me a Shadow Monarch? Yes. After all, Young Master can't become one. Beru said emphatically. There is only one Shadow Monarch in this world. In short, it means that only when Sung Jinwoo dies and the position of the monarch is empty, that Suho can get the chance to become the Shadow Monarch. But Sung Jinwoo was the ruler of death. He would never die. In fact, he is the one who is truly immortal. I know very well that my father is great. Suho was curious about another thing. Then, what is the purpose of my system? Beru smiled faintly and looked into Suho's eyes. The existence of Sung Suho, born from the marriage of a Shadow Monarch and an ordinary human, was an unusual existence in all dimensions. So, even the designer who created the system would not have dared to guess what kind of existence Suho would grow into in the future. Would he simply live as the young master who inherited the skills of the Shadow Monarch as he does now? Or would he escape from his destiny and find his own way, just like Sung Jinwoo did a long time ago? The system merely acts as a guide for Young Master, whichever path you take. If there is a function that did not exist before, it will surely be helpful. Beru was already looking at Suho's face, the face of a man who had long been alone and fought against everything in the world. He survived by constantly struggling in a place closer to death than anyone else in the world. In the end, even that death was won by his own power. The earth now was at peace, built through his noble sacrifice. But that peace has been threatened again by the outer gods. Status window. Suho, who was listening to Beru, suddenly opened the status window. Name, Suho level 16. Occupation, N. 1 title, Wolf Slayer. HP 2350, 2350, 235, 235. Stats. Muscle strength 35, body strength 25, agility, intellect 25, senses 25, divisive ability 0, skills, passive skills, strength level 2, twin swords 1, active skills, ruler's power level 1, shadow fragment level 1, blade storm level 1. After hearing Beru's words, Suho also understood why his occupation was still labeled as none. There will probably never be anything written on that spot that says Shadow Monarch. Suho paid more attention to the other numbers below. This is my current level. Compared to the first level, when he was being chased by the mist burns, the figures had gone up tremendously. There were already so many useful skills, but I am still weak. Suho was never overconfident with his own strength. It's not humility, but a mere fact. He had already reached level 99 several times in his childhood dreams. Looking back on the sensations he felt at that time, his current power was too insignificant. If he didn't obtain the title of Wolf Slayer at the right time, he might not have defeated Brokey. Suho also checked out new skills during the battle. Skill Twinsel 1. Passive skill. No mana required. You can use dual swords more proficiently. 33% additional damage is applied when using 2 swords. This also applies to weapons other than swords. It's twin swords. Come to think of it, he had always been fighting with a weapon in both hands, an axe at first and sword this time. Perhaps this skill was created based on his fighting method so far. In order to become stronger here, I will continue to use double swords. Suho's gaze stayed on Rakan's sword. Experience proved that the attack power of Rakan's sword was quite satisfactory. Once caught, the necks of the beasts of Guanaxin were cut immediately. It seemed that he would need another sword, comparable to Rakan's sword, to balance his 2 hands. I need to earn some money. Hunter weapons are very expensive. Suho's gaze turned downward. And this little one. Before he knew it, the wolf cub had finished eating the seaweed soup and was sticking out of its stomach. He was still lying on the floor weakly, as if he had no energy to crawl. I will have to raise it for a while to use it later on. Please name your pet. A system message had been urging Suho from earlier. Suho decided on a name without hesitation. Gray, because it has gray hair. Will you go with Gray? Yes. As soon as Suho finished speaking, the question mark on the wolf cub's head was erased and a new name was engraved. Fangwolf. Gray, who had officially become Suho's pet, raised his head with unfocused eyes and sniffed. He smelled Suho. Suho tapped the cub's nose with his fingertips and asked Rakan's sword. Hey, let me ask you one thing. What? How do I raise him to be useful? Is there anything special about raising that? Just let him eat well, sleep well, and play well. Don't say something so obvious. He is a descendant of the Fang monarch. Is there any special method? Eating is very important. The reason why he became so weak in the first place must be because Brokey kept starving him because he was afraid of this little one's growth. Rakan's sword raged again as he remembered what Brokey had done. If the child of the canine clan had grown normally, there would have been no way he would have been held captive by someone like Brokey. So, feed him consistently. If you give him enough sleep and let him play freely, he will grow into a much stronger predator than Brokey. Really? What can I feed him? Right, he's a magical beast. It's even better if he is a monster that is self-hunting. Originally, children of the clan play hunting from the moment they are born. It's called hunting. It was absurd. To make a guy who doesn't even have the strength to walk on his feet go hunting. Ugh. They are worse than ants. Still, our ants can be left alone when they are larvae. Suho came up with a good idea upon hearing that. Who was it that raised Suho, who was a baby in the first place? Beru, you take care of him from now on, out of nowhere? Yeah, you are the best nanny I know. I don't know what to do after hearing such compliments from young master. Beru twisted his body and was embarrassed. Let's go then. Where? Clueless Beru. Suho picked up Gray's and inserted the key to the shadow dungeon into his own shadow. Would you like to enter the shadow dungeon? Where else? Here, of course. Clack. Entering the shadow dungeon. Swoosh! After entering the shadow dungeon, Suho put Beru on Gray's back. From now on, you guys are a team. No matter how small Gray was, he was twice as big as Beru. Of course, even if you put the two together, they were still just a handful. This place can't be. Rakan's Fang, who had come along unintentionally, felt a strange feeling while looking around the Shadow Dungeon. Is this the world of the Shadow Monarch? To be exact, this is the world young master inherited. Of course, it was neglected so much that the wild monsters hid in it. Beru realized why Suho had brought them here, and his eyes lit up. Disquieting gazes were glaring at him from all over the dungeon. These are wild goblins. They are perfect opponents to train a pet. Beru smirked and tapped Gray's butt. Now, wake up, descendant of the Fang Monarch. Show those ridiculous guys your ferocity. Whine. Gray seemed completely unwilling to fight. It was as if he didn't even have the will to get up. He crouched flat on the floor. Seeing that, Rakan's sword couldn't hide his anger. Kif! You have lost all of your innate fighting instincts due to your life in confinement. What should we do with this? Well then. Right. Suho and Beru's reactions were resolute. Beru's skill is predation. He was able to absorb some of the power and memories of the monster he consumed. Arise, young warrior. Beru, the best nanny Suho knew, tapped Gray's butt once more. Harshly. Skill Harsh Command has been used by Beru. Harsh Command increases Gray's stats by 50%. As a side effect of Skill Harsh Command, Gray is cursed with madness. Grr! Gray's eyes, which had no motivation at all, suddenly changed. Beru laughed evilly and continued tapping Gray's butt. Start with that momentum. Growl. Chapter 20, Chapter 19. The internet has been buzzing for a while. Breaking news, the hidden reality of the Hyena Guild, werewolves of Gwanaksan, survivors who almost became sacrificial lambs. The survivors of Gwanaksan Field, rescued by Suho, revealed everything they had experienced to the media, and the public was shocked. Crazy. What was that? They caught their own kind, human, and sacrificed them. How could they do that? Hunters were living as slaves of demons. Aren't they a traitor to humanity at this level? Translator Anam. Citizens reacted extremely to the fact that the same humans were hunting humans and feeding them to those beasts. Along with them, other guilds that had been involved with the Hyena Guild were also criticized. Wasn't the Reaper Guild behind the Hyena Guild? Yep, that's right. Even if they deny it now, everyone in the industry knows otherwise. Where did that huge capital come from when the Hyena Guild were milking from low-level hunters' loan in the first place? I heard they were originally neighborhood gangsters. 100% sure a certain guild gave them that money. That guild might be very anxious now. Blag. Are we going to keep looking at all this nonsense? Lim Taegyu, the guild leader of the Reaper Guild, hit his fist hard with an angry face. The force had split the marble desk in two, but no one in the conference room cared about it. I'm sorry. We are also responding with urgency, but as you can see, the public opinion is too strong. Planning Director. Chills. A cold voice held the planning director's breath. Do you think I hired you to make that excuse, to gather in this room and rely on the comments? I'm sorry. Phew. Lim Taegyu leaned back in his chair and let out a long sigh. Let me ask you one thing. How did our image end up like this? Until last year, everything was good, right? In response to Lim Taegyu's question, the executives only looked at each other with embarrassed expressions. In the previous year, Reaper Guild was on the rise as Korea's #1 guild in name and reality. The reason was Lim Taegyu, the guild leader. It was thanks to him being one of the few S-class hunters in Korea, despite being middle-aged. There was one more person. Aside from Lim Taegyu, there was one more S-class hunter in the Reaper Guild. It was only up until last year. That's right, sir. When Vice President Baek Yun-ho went on his own last year. Shh. The head of the planning office hurriedly shut the subordinate's mouth. Such a tactless person. Who wouldn't know that and ask? S-class hunter Baek Yun-ho. He was the person who established the Baiko Guild last year, after becoming independent from the guild he was previously in. The moment he left, an S-class hunter, the power of the Reaper Guild was virtually cut in half. But that wasn't the real problem. The thing is, everyone in the room knew the underlying reason. They just couldn't speak about it. If they do, their throats would be cut in half. After Baek Yun-ho left, Lim Taegyu brought an A-class hunter from outside and put him in the vice president position in a fit of anger. Judging from the fact that he was a close acquaintance with Lim Taegyu even before the cataclysm, he was a so-called paratrooper. Of course, the executives of the Reaper Guild strongly objected to that decision, because an A-class hunter couldn't take the place of an S-class hunter. The A-class hunter, Lee Min-song, he brought was a beginner who had never entered a dungeon. However, Lim Taegyu did not bring Lee Min-song for no solid reason. Lee Min-song just had a lot of money. He was already a businessman with a lot of money, born with a golden spoon even before awakening. When he was younger, he was a movie actor who was so popular that he made a name for himself as an Asian superstar. Regardless of dungeons or hunter things, Lee Min-song's life has been that of a rich man who has only walked the glamorous road from the time he was born. Lim Taegyu's real purpose? Money. If power is weak, why not buy an expensive weapon through an increase in financial power? In fact, Lee Min-song was more of a sponsor with strong financial power rather than a vice president. The plan worked to some degree. After Lee Min-song became the vice president, the guild members started to get more and more expensive and flashy equipment. But, ironically, since then, the guild's image has deteriorated. The head of the planning office had no choice but to press down on what he wanted to say and endure it. Just then, the door of the conference room opened, and Vice President Lee Min-song in question entered. "Hey, sorry for being late, sorry. There was so much traffic." Lee Min-song laughed and joked even though he was an hour late for the meeting. As a handsome and famous actor when he was young, his face was covered with a pitiful act. Lim Taegyu's cold eyes glared at Lee Min-song. Vice President Lee Min-song. "Ooh, what is this? Did you break the table? Your strength is great." Vice President Lee Min-song. "Hey, Secretary Kim, change this table to something better sometime today, okay?" "Hey, Lee Min-song." Thud. Lim Taegyu couldn't hold his anger and shouted. The smile on Lee Min-song's face disappeared. "Hey?" Lee Min-song's head turned and he looked at Lim Taegyu with a raging gaze. "Doesn't that title sound a little rude?" Lim Taegyu ignored the words and asked, glaring at Lee Min-song. "Vice President Lee Min-song, why are you late for the meeting? I told you, there was a traffic jam. Aren't you late because you're taking care of the mess with Hyena Guild?" At those words, Lee Min-song's brow flinched. However, he soon smirked. "What are you talking about again? What hyena? The one you can see at the zoo." "Don't change the topic, Min-song." Chills. The mask was removed from Lee Min-song's face. "I'm not liking your tone." Even in the face of wrath with Lim Taegyu, an S-class hunter, Min-song only has a mockery look on his face. "When did our Taegyu grow up like this? The bastard who used to be my driver." At those words, anger welled up in Lim Taegyu's eyes. However, Lee Min-song did not care and rather approached him. He pulled Taegyu's collar, then he glanced up and down at him with a scanty glance. "Sk! Do you really not know what people do? How did you get lucky enough to wake up as an S-class? So you could become arrogant in only 2 years? Was it like this with the old owner as well?" Lee Min-song. "Oops. Come to think of it, you weren't the previous owner. Our Taegyu. Don't you still have 2 years left on your driver's contract?" Lee Min-song. "Do not test my patience." "Why? You're gonna kill me?" "Oh wow, that's scary. The dog is trying to bite its owner. I gave money to a guild that was going down, but you don't even know how to return the favor." If a person could be killed with a gaze, everyone in the conference room might have already died. Please go outside and fight. The battle of nerves between the two people, who had a complicated relationship, made it impossible for the executives and staff to even breathe properly. Fortunately, Lim Taegyu was not hot-tempered enough to cloud his mind with anger. "Whoa, let's stop this. You were going to do something, weren't you?" "Vice President Lee Min-song, I already know that you have had some kind of commission with the Hyena Guild. Sooner or later, the association will also know about it." "Association?" Lee Min-song's expression hardened. Lim Taegyu let out a deep sigh. "Yes, so tell me what the hell you were doing behind our backs. We have to know so we can clean it up somehow." Clean up?" Lee Min-song rubbed his chin and was lost in thoughts. He didn't want to be specific. He couldn't do it either. In the end, Lee Min-song smiled and shrugged. "Well, nothing special, just running light errands and playing with money? Is that really all?" "Yes, even if the association decides, I can solve it on my own, so don't worry." I hope that is true. Or else what? The hunter law is so weak, so there won't be any problems if I mobilize my lawyers. The hunter law, is definitely out of date. Lim Taegu pondered on those words. It was natural. It has only been 2 years since the cataclysm occurred. Even now, the association was working hard to pass hunter-related legislation, but there were still holes in it. That's why guys like Hyena Guild were still able to play to their heart's content. Satisfied now? If you don't have anything more to say, I'm leaving. Lee Min-song turns around and leaves the conference room without even listening to the answer. Behind him, Lim Taegu issued the last warning. Vice President Lee Min-song, it would be better not to be overconfident. Even if the law is weak, the president of the association is never an easy person. Thud. The conference room door was slammed shut. Lim Taegu shook his head and sat back in his chair. It was only then that the employees were able to breathe out. Lee Min-song came out with a relaxed gait. His expression was contorted like that of a demon. A bastard who doesn't even know the subject dares question me. He didn't show it, but in fact, his whole body was drenched in cold sweat from Lim Taegyu's killing gazes. More than the fear he has, he couldn't tolerate getting his pride stepped on. I only got in because he begged me to be the vice president, but he treats me like a servant? Lim Taegu, how dare you? But he had no right to express this anger. After all, Taegu was an S-class hunter, and he was only an A-class. He couldn't help but control his anger. Hyena Guild? No. The guy who destroyed the Hyena Guild, Lee Min-song called someone with a scary look on his face. Yes, it is me. Did you figure out his identity? No, Vice President. I've been trying to find out about him from all the survivors. A voice without confidence came from the other side of the phone. None of the survivors knows what he looks like. What? They don't know what he looked like? How come? The hunter was covering his face with a mask and hood the whole time. What is noteworthy is that he used twin swords, and it is said that he picked up the sword used by werewolves and used it. Find out more about who that bastard is and bring him to me. Yes, sir. Well understood. Thud! Lee Min-song couldn't hold back his anger and threw his phone on the floor. Meanwhile, at that time, Suho was spending a peaceful time in the Shadow Dungeon. Of course, only Suho is at peace. Gray, the wolf cub of the canine clan, was about to die. Growl! Oh, that's great. Finally, our wolfie hunted a goblin alone, although the opponent is of course a baby goblin. Kiao! At Beru's praise, the palm-sized wolf cub howled sadly. No, howled ferociously. The way he stepped on the young goblin's corpse with his paws looked extremely pitiful. No, brave. Now, eat! A true hunter eats all his prey without leaving any. Growl! Ugh! Open your mouth wide and chew. Thud! Chomp! Chomp! Gray showed signs of exhaustion, but couldn't disobey the harsh commands of Assistant Professor Beru. As he was told to do so, he opened his mouth wide and bit the goblin he hunted. Ring! The level of Pet Gray increased. A message arrived in front of Suho. Oh, he also levels up? Didn't I tell you? If you let him eat, sleep, and play, he'd grow up. I know he'd grow up, but I thought I was the only one leveling up. Another message arrived. Pet Gray offers 50% of its experience as a sacrifice to its owner. What? Suho and Beru looked at each other. They turned their gazes to look at Gray, who was lying flat on the floor. Young master, how could you steal this little one's power? No, suddenly a feeling of guilt came flooding in.